Tēnā koutou katoa. Welcome to the resumption of the annual plan hearings. And we've got a busy day today. We're working right through till late afternoon. There's a few changes to the timetable today. So as we go through, I will just read you the agenda page number and the person that is speaking and their organisation. And I'll try and remember to let you know if they've got PowerPoints. If anyone is presenting a PowerPoint, I just ask that when they want the slide moved along, as if they could just indicate, and then the governance advisors or the administration advisors will sort that out. So our very first submission today, I'll welcome Jo Coughlin, who's chair of the New Zealand Chinese Language Week Charitable Trust. Welcome, Jo.
Thank you, Rachel, Your Worship and councillors. Can everybody hear me all right?
Yes, we can, that's fine.
Great, okay. Well, look, you all have received a letter, so I'll take that as read, but really I just wanted to be able to use this opportunity to raise a few, sort of highlight a few points of the week and what we're trying to achieve, give a little bit of context and history, and then really just use it as an opportunity for you to ask questions of me. So I'm here in my role as chair of the New Zealand Chinese Language Week Charitable Trust, and this trust was established at the sort of midway through 2014, was really the brainchild of Raymond Huo, who's a Labour MP. And really his vision was to encourage more New Zealanders to take on Chinese language learning, really given the huge shift in the relationship, particularly in the trade relationship between New Zealand and China. And he felt that it would be a great way just to shine a light really on Chinese language and culture and to put a bit of a lens on it for 1 week of the year and get as many people from the grassroots up as possible really to learn more about Chinese language and culture. So we set about setting up a trust, and now we're into our 6th year of New Zealand Chinese Language Week, which essentially is run by a team in Wellington. And the idea is that across the country, we have a range of programs and activities which enable school children, local government, mayors get involved, business can be involved. Last year we focused on the tourism industry and there was a lot of involvement there. Clearly we'll be pivoting this year. And we really deliver the following programs and assets, I suppose, for the trust. So the key projects are a trilingual book that we distributed last year to 500 libraries and schools throughout New Zealand. And we've actually done that in Te Reo as well as Chinese. So it's quite a lovely, it's a children's book, do a different one each year. We did a useful phrases booklet, which was used by the New Zealand China Year of Tourism as one of their key assets and used at the dinner in Guangzhou, really as it was a nice way really to highlight some of the work that had been done in that area. The 5 Days, 5 Phrases challenge is a social media challenge that goes out across the country, just 5 simple phrases. Business owners, mayors, politicians can use that to just encourage and challenge people to give Chinese a go. Youth ambassadors, we are really tied into the whole sort of China ecosystem, I guess. And youth ambassadors tend to be the people that have won a Confucius Institute Chinese language speaking competition. They're very enthusiastic, amazing talent, hugely diverse range of young people in New Zealand that have taken Chinese language learning on board. And really it's about bringing them into the fold so that they can encourage more people to take up the opportunity. We run quite a big website, which really is a portal for anybody interested in China and Chinese language learning. Last year we started National Dumpling Day, which is just a really fun way to get local restaurants across the country involved. And we got quite a lot of good coverage on TVNZ for that. Social media is just ongoing, and then we run a closing event really with key stakeholders. It can actually be at the beginning or the end of the week, just depends how the timetable goes. But look, the whole point of this is really just to encourage people to take up Chinese language learning, give it a go. The reason really for coming to local government is because it is very grassroots, And certainly on the back of things like the Mayoral Forum and the strong sister city relationships and all the delegations that have been going backwards and forwards, this is quite a simple way of saying, look, we think this, relationship is important. It's a great way of involving young people. It's a great way of involving all the library networks, and and it's just growing each year. So, for example, last year we ended up having 290 events across New Zealand. We started with none, so it's grown pretty quickly. And I guess our ask of you is, our challenge as a trust is to try and get this onto a sustainable financial footing. We don't really want to be coming every year. We would like to get a commitment from local government to provide support ongoing. The idea would be a small cash contribution just to pay for, some of the project work that needs to be done, but then also to have a key liaison person at each of the different councils around the country, so that we can really leverage the week to the benefit of everybody that's involved. So I guess we've got an existing platform. We just want to continue to build on it. Hopefully it's of use to councils around New Zealand. Certainly many mayors have got involved, and every year we just get more, which is great. So really over to you to ask me questions, and really love to hear your feedback and to know what you think about this initiative.
Thank you. We've got questions from Councillor Egger, Councillor Laurie and Councillor McGurk.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Jo. Just in relation to this year, there has been media reports of increased racism and verbal attacks, in particular towards Chinese people. Will your approach vary at all, or will you be doing slightly different things to reflect that, or to try and heighten education?
Well, I think the main thing is that we just want to continue to carry on doing what we're doing, really, because this is part of the problem. I mean, we have to try and encourage people to feel really positive about the relationship. I mean, this is our biggest trading partner, and certainly I think you can learn a lot through language. You can learn a lot about another culture through language. And I mean, it is pretty ironic that we have way more children in New Zealand learning French than we do learning Mandarin. And how are we expecting our young people to grow and to feel comfortable and just to accept the culture if we don't give them any opportunity really to learn anything about it?
Thank you.
Councillor Laurie.
Thanks. Really following on from what Judine said, do you think, given the concerns about how the Chinese government may or may not have handled the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think there's a greater need as a result of COVID-19 for us to do this kind of bridge building?
Oh, look, I mean, we're certainly not going to be wanting to get into any political space, that's for sure. But I just think it is important. I mean, yeah, I think we just want this to be kind of normal. We just want to be encouraging our kids to be embracing all kinds of nationalities and diversity hugely. We don't want them to feel, we don't want them to feel uncomfortable. We just want it to be natural that we would have a good relationship, obviously, with our biggest trading partner. But it's more than even just children. I just think about the business connections. And I mean, I used to be a councillor, and I've done a number of delegations to China myself, and even in business. It's actually quite hard when, you simply don't even feel comfortable saying hello. We just have this, we just haven't had any real education, I think, or exposure to much in the way of Chinese language and culture. So I think by being able to sort of break down the barriers a bit and just help people to feel more comfortable, I think that's a really positive thing.
And do you think, just quickly, Madam Mayor, if it's okay, and do you think that it's also important to encourage people to think about the Chinese language as not just being something that's in the People's Republic of China? The Chinese language is spoken all over the world. It's spoken by communities right here, New Zealand communities. It's spoken all throughout Southeast Asia. Do you think that's an important thing that we get across to people, that we're not just talking about a relationship, an economic relationship with an economic superpower? We're talking about people across the world.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. Sorry, it's just saying my connection's unstable, so I hope it's okay at your end.
Fine, Joe.
Thanks.
Thank you. Joe, thank you. Now, Councillor McGurk, did you have a question? The hand's disappeared on me.
Yeah, I just lowered
On
it.
its back.
It was a pretty basic question. Ni hao.
Ni hao, ni hao.
Just a fairly basic question. I know you've asked in your written submission for 5,000. Is that from this council? And over what period of time would you like that ongoing commitment? Bearing in mind,
Well, look, I mean, you know, what we're looking for, we put 5,000 because we are looking for 5,000 really from as many councils as we can get. We did go to Local Government New Zealand a couple of years ago, and while they were supportive, and you know, I mean, everybody's very supportive in terms of in principle, but it was difficult for them at that time to make a financial contribution. So I thought, well, maybe it's better just to actually go to individual councils and say, look, you know, what are you prepared to commit? Obviously, that would be, it's just a simple round number. We'd be prepared to take less, and obviously the more councils that get involved, the better. But partly because it would be just really good to have somebody from your council who's actually really involved in the week at your end and able to leverage as much as possible. So it's probably better from the point of view of the council to have somebody with more ownership of it.
Thank you. Thanks, Joe. Thank you very much for coming in to submit and for leaving us with those thoughts about how we could make this work. We have our own China week that we have every second year, so we'll work on whether we can get some alignment. Maybe that would work well for us for Chinese Language Week. Thank you for your work.
Thank you very much. Thank you, everyone.
Our next submitter is the Food Group, and the submission is on page 222. And I think we've got Hannah here to present on behalf of the Food Group, and there is a PowerPoint. Welcome, Hannah.
Kia ora koutou. Can you hear me?
Yes, kia ora, we can. That's perfect.
Hi. So Professor John Potter and Dr. Mika Foster are going to be presenting on behalf of the group, so they should be joining any minute now. And then I'll be giving a personal submission.
Kia ora, Mika. Welcome to the hearing.
Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora, Mika.
Anna.
John's just on his way.
I'm here.
Oh, kia ora, John. Welcome to
Kia
the
ora.
meeting.
Thank
Have
you.
you got a video, John?
I should have. I didn't. Oh, there we go. There we are.
Perfect. Welcome. All right. So whenever you're ready, we've read your submission, so it's an opportunity to highlight any key points. And if we have time in the 10 minutes, we'll take questions.
Okay.
Tēnā rā koutou, he mihi nui ake kia koutou ki ngā mema o te kaunihera o Whakatū I tēnei ahiahi. Thank you for allowing us to present to you this afternoon on behalf of a group of health professionals and community members advocating for a shift towards healthier, more sustainable diets. I thought if we could just start with some brief introductions from John and Hannah, and then I'll continue.
Kia ora, John Potter. I'm professor at the Centre for Public Health Research at Massey University, and I'm professor and senior advisor at the Fred Hutchinson Cancer Research Center in Seattle and professor emeritus at the University of Washington. Really grateful for your time today. Thank you.
Welcome.
Kia ora, councillors. My name's Hannah O'Malley. I am a pharmacist at Life Pharmacy Prices. I also have a big interest in healthy nutrition, and I'm the director of the Better Base, where we aim to help people to eat more healthy, sustainable foods.
And my name is Mika Foster. I'm the Director of Edible Research, a company committed to the translation of robust nutrition evidence for practical application in government, healthcare and the food industry. And my background is in nutrition science, dietetics and law. So today I will start our submission by placing the Good Food City initiative within the broader context of New Zealand's national and regional landscape, with a focus on the economic and leadership opportunities that it presents. And then John will discuss some key public health considerations. And as Hannah mentioned, she'll follow on with her submission on the particular importance of this initiative for the Nelson City Council. So next slide, please. At the global level, the 2019 Global Sustainable Development Report, The Future Is Now, has raised building sustainable food systems and healthy nutrition patterns as a key entry point for enhancing progress on all of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals. In the Aotearoa New Zealand context, the government has set out its vision for a productive, sustainable and inclusive economy in This Is Our Plan, and in the Treasury Living Standards Framework, which you can see depicted on the slide here, which provides us with a shared understanding of what helps to achieve higher living standards for intergenerational well-being. The Good Food Cities initiative, with its focus on healthy, climate-friendly eating, the reduction of food waste, the protection of our biodiversity, and collaboration with citizens, businesses, public institutions, and other organisations to achieve these goals inclusively and equitably, aligns well with the economic well-being and leadership themes of the government's plan, as well as the responsibilities of the Crown and its delegates to Māori under Te Tiriti o Waitangi. Next slide, please. The focus of the Good Food Cities initiative on sustainable food systems, enhancing biodiversity, and an increase in the consumption of plant-based foods for health also aligns at the regional level with the Te Tauihu intergenerational strategy, with its focus on being good ancestors, longer-term planning, and unlocking the potential in our communities for the benefit of our people, our land, and our future. A deliberate focus on new plant-based food products and solutions can provide viable, high-value and environmentally sustainable alternatives for farmers and growers in the region, including Māori businesses and land holdings interested in regenerative agriculture and land use diversification practices. Next slide, please. My final point relates to leadership. A massive wave of disruption is crashing over the primary sector, with a complex set of interrelated drivers, making this a pivotal point in time for our leaders and our agri-food sector, and making the Good Food Initiative especially timely. Most obviously right now is the critical role that our food and beverage industry is playing and will continue to play in post-COVID response and recovery. Secondly, climate change. As we learn ever more from our environmental experts, it is becoming clear that the impact of our prevailing diets on the planet, perhaps even more than on our health, is fast becoming the only thing that really matters. Fortunately, what is good for the health of our planet is also what is best for human health, as you'll hear from John. Thirdly, for some time now, global macro trends are clearly showing that consumers, including in New Zealand, are now supporting a range of disruptive new technologies and food products, particularly in the area of plant-based foods and solutions. This opens up major opportunities for our farmers, growers, retailers, and agribusinesses, including SMEs or small and medium-sized enterprises. So we've entered a phase of human history where strong and bold leadership is critical. The Good Food Cities initiative is one attractive mechanism that will support the Nelson City Council to capture some of these new opportunities that are hitting our shores. So I'll hand over now to John to present some public health considerations of relevance to Good Food Cities. Tēnā rākoutou.
Mika, thank you. Mayor Rachel, thank you very much. If I could have the next slide. So this is just to introduce me. I already mentioned my name, but my qualifications are originally trained as a physician, and my PhD is in epidemiology. If I can have the next slide. What I want to leave you with is just three important points. One is that there is a complex knot of relationships among food choices, food raising, the environment, human health, climate change. Second point, how we eat now, and I'll show you the data in a moment, is unlike any other time in human history. And the third point is that moving towards a plant-based diet, as Mika's already mentioned, will benefit our health as well as the environment and the climate. If I can have the next slide. So our diet and food choices influence the way we raise food and where we raise food, but they also influence, importantly, our health. The diet and food raising practices are in a complex set of relationships with climate change and environment, and in turn, the way in which we raise food determines our food supply, and that comes back to how we make choices. So this is a very complex set of relationships, and we need to keep this in mind as we try and shift one piece of this story. We're going to be necessarily moving others. So it makes some sense to think about how to move them in a way that is beneficial to everybody. If I can have the next slide. Here's the important point I want to make about the way in which we eat now. So sugar consumption a few hundred years ago was less than 2 kilograms a year per person. In New Zealand, it's around 40, even higher kilograms per person per year, a 20-fold increase in consumption. We are consuming massive amounts of sugar, refined foods. Second point I want to make in this area is that meat consumption in traditional agricultural societies largely around 5 to 10 kilograms per person per year. Occasionally people would have a feast, but mostly we were consuming very modest amounts of meat. In New Zealand now, it's around 120 kilograms per person per year. And again, you can see that that's the same kind of increase as we see for sugar. So we're eating just incredibly differently, and it has a major impact on our health. Most of the food habits we have relate to most of the health problems we have. Sugar and fat and meat are all associated very much with obesity, with diabetes, with heart disease, with hypertension. So there's a big, big increase. If I can have the next slide. In New Zealand, agriculture accounts for about half of all our greenhouse gases. And if I can have the next slide, to move to a more whole food, and so that means reducing the sugar as well as increasing the whole foods in our diet, plant-based diet, as individuals, as whānau and community, will help us, our health, our environment, and our climate all together. There's a lot of data for this, and if you go to the last slide that I have up here, you'll see I have a book that I published a couple of years ago now. Next slide, please, called Thought for Food. This actually provides a much more extensive argument around the topics that we're talking now. We'd be very happy to take questions, or if you prefer, you can hear from Hannah first, and then the three of us will take questions, whatever you choose, Mayor Rachel.
And I think we'll take questions now, and then we'll come to Hannah's submission just to keep to time. So I've got
Thank you.
Councillor Svensson, and Councillor Edgar.
Kia ora koutou. Thanks very much, Hannah and John and Micah, I think it is. Yeah, that was really great. I just had a question. I was wondering what kind of engagement had been undertaken with our local iwi and whether they were supportive of this initiative.
Mika, I think that's you.
It might actually be Hannah. She's hands on the ground there. Did you want to start with that, Hannah, and I can jump in?
Sure. So we have recently been trying to reach out and build this relationship to have the conversation with local iwi, and we recognise that they're crucial partners in taking such an initiative forward. And obviously recently there has been a lot going on, and we haven't managed to have those conversations yet, but Mika may have some further insights to add.
We're very clear that any strategy that is developed under the Good Food Initiative will need to be done in partnership with Māori, and Nelson City Council's already had a good experience of what good engagement looks like with the development of the Te Tauihu intergenerational strategy with iwi groups, including Wakatū Incorporation, in collaboration with the other councils. So we will continue to engage and push those engagement processes within our group, but the key point really is that if the council takes this on and we move to the stage of setting up a strategy that fits with Good Foods, at that stage engagement will be critical with Māori.
Thank you. I'm going to go to Hannah's submission now because we're out of the time, and the councillors have asked this hearing to stay to time today. So I'll go to Hannah, and if there's time, I'll come back for the additional questions. So Hannah, we'll start your submission.
Sure. Thank you so much for the opportunity to present today and discuss the annual plan. I wholeheartedly support the climate action components of this annual plan, including a community-based curbside compost trail and funding for the Nelson Tasman Climate Forum. However, I'm here today to call on the council to dial up this climate action and commit to becoming a good food city. So in particular, I'll explore with you how delicious, powerful and life-changing this could be for our community and what Nelson could look and feel like as a good food city. Next slide, please.
We just need to share that PowerPoint, I think. So hopefully that's on its way. Here we go.
Next slide, please. Next slide. Thank you. So part of becoming a good food city, if you go back one slide. Yeah. Part of becoming a good food city involves aligning food procurement with the planetary health diet. Low carbon food is becoming more popular than ever, and I can assure you that morning teas, lunches, and afternoon teas will still be completely delicious. Tasty and filling burritos, sandwiches, salads, and snacks could be sourced from local suppliers, supporting our local economy. And by showing leadership in this area, other businesses, schools, restaurants, and community groups are likely to follow your lead. Next slide, please. Food is often overlooked in climate conversations. However, according to the Lancet Medical Journal, it's the single strongest lever to optimizing both human health and sustainability on Earth. A recent study by Otago University is one of many outlining why this is the case. This graph is taken from that study and the reference is at the bottom. So the study showed that greenhouse gases related to food could be cut by up to 42% by choosing climate-friendly food and avoiding food waste. And significant benefits for health equity and cost savings were also shown. You've heard from the local district health board about how poor nutrition is the leading cause of health loss in New Zealand. And poor nutrition disproportionately affects those most vulnerable in our society. And we must work urgently to address these health inequities. These complex issues require cross-sector and cross-community collaboration. And the beautiful thing about encouraging and enabling healthy food consumption is that it has this powerful halo effect. It's contagious. And food policies that promote healthy, sustainable eating will influence widely within and beyond our region. Next slide, please. Food can definitely change lives. So last week, Anne Evans, another member of the group, introduced you to the CHIP program. Dozens of Nelsonians have recently experienced this lifestyle program led by local GP, Dr. Wayne Hurlo. A friend of mine took part and she wrote me a letter to express the impact that this program has had on her life. She's lost 12 kgs so far since starting the program and says she knows her journey is going to be ongoing and it's a lifestyle change. The impact of food on health and the environment is not always as visible or as dramatic. Simply having reliable access to affordable, healthy food and the power to create healthy meals at home can be life-changing as well. So why don't we aim to achieve a society where every individual has food security? As mentioned by the DHB, they're working on a food security plan, and this will be more effective with council support. Next slide, please. The Good Food City concept is part of building a bright future for Nelson. Together, if we took this on, we could become not just a smart little city, but also a healthy little city with an environment that provides kai that supports everyone to thrive. Nelson could become Aotearoa's health and climate leader, a place where young and old come together to grow, cook, and compost food and have fun. The path to achieving this is flexible, but possible early steps include developing a Good Food City strategy in partnership with local iwi, updating council food procurement policies and supporting the curbside compost pilot, supporting Kai Rescue and other food rescue initiatives, investing in community gardens and increasing edible landscaping. As someone who still considers myself a young person, I am afraid of the world I will come to live in if leaders don't take steps called for by scientists. But I'm also optimistic that we can grasp this opportunity and have confidence that this council is one that will be brave enough to make the decisions that are needed. Best of luck as you consider the submissions, and we're happy to take questions.
Right, thank you, Hannah. Thank you for submission. Now, questions. Back to my question list, and I think I had Councillor Edgar and then Councillor Noonan.
Thank you so much. The first question is just really a yes or no. So are you presenting to all councils around the country?
This is the first, as we're a local group, but we also have national networks and we plan to be submitting to other councils. I understand Tasman's long-term plan's open, so we'll be submitting there, and I understand the DHB will also, and Wellington's has just opened as well.
And are you, because I mean, when I think of single plastic bag use, smoking reductions, they were all led nationally rather than by local or regional. So is your approach not best done at a national level by talking to Ministry for the Environment, Ministry of Health?
In fact, if I can answer that question, Councillor, there is some interaction already beginning with Ministry of Environment and also with DOC, as well as some of the other Ministry of Health. I was the Chief Science Advisor of the Ministry of Health for 3 years, up until the beginning of last year. And so I have connections there. Yes, we will do this, but if you think about it, having a sort of pearl that pops up first, which is how I'm thinking about Nelson in this regard. The leadership, the possibility of shaping where the national dialogue might go, all seem important to us. And it's actually easier to deal with some things at a local level and then move them to a national level rather than try and get everybody coordinated at once.
Thank you. Thank you for your very thoughtful submission. Councillor Noonan and Councillor Laurie, you'll need to email through your questions as we're out of time. But thank you very much for coming in to present to us today.
Ngā mihi kia koutou.
Kia ora.
Kia ora, thank you.
Kia ora, thank you. Our next submitter today is Warren Borlase, and Warren is here speaking as a director of Evans Creek Limited. You'll find the submission on page 228. Welcome. Warren, welcome to the meeting. We've read your submission. It's an opportunity to highlight any key points or add any additional information, and we've got 5 minutes set aside, including time for questions. Welcome.
Okay. Good afternoon, councillors and your worship. I guess it's about residential rates and commercial rates, and the retailers and employees in the retailing properties are also that work in these properties are also residential ratepayers as well. And the beat on the street is that a rate increase at this time is not appropriate. That's the noise I'm hearing from a lot of people. And I know other councils around the country have not done a rate increase. And I also know that Mr. Barry Thompson has spoken to council before regarding the rates in the CBD are more than New World Street over there. So already in the CBD, we pay more rates than, say, where I can see a commercial property over the other side of the car park there. So that matter still really also needs to be addressed. I guess, the council business model of year in and year out on increasing rates is fundamentally a model that needs to be reviewed, because you just can't, keep doing that every year. And especially this year, there's been a number of people that have been made redundant, which doesn't hit the media in this town already over the last couple of weeks. So they're cracking up to some reasonable numbers that people don't know about. That's all I need to say, actually. I'm probably not the only person making this noise.
Thank you, Warren. I'll see if we've got questions. Councillor Edgar.
Thank you for that. Warren, one thing that has been raised by some other submitters, in particular with regards to the commercial differential, is the rating mechanism whereby, of course, we rate on land value as opposed to capital value. Do you have any comments on that?
Well, land value in Nelson is increased. Some of the property, the wood on the land is probably, some of it is at the lower end. So that's an interesting one. If you've got a property that's under code, that's commercial, then that property is not worth much, whether you just rate it on the land. But the land value for Nelson, it just keeps on increasing for residential and for commercial, because there's a lack of land in this valley we live in. That's not going to stop, I'm afraid. Not even with the pandemic. I think values are going to hold what they are now today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McGurk.
Yes, thanks. 3 minutes. Thanks, Warren. Thanks for your submission. This is a pretty quick, simple question. You asked for a rates freeze. Any priorities where you think we should keep investing or cut back on?
Well, you need to spend some money because the money's got to go around. I mean, if I make a comment about that, that means I'm criticising some of the prior decisions that have already been made. So that's what I'm not about, actually, to be honest. I mean, you need to go through and trim some things off. I mean, naturally, the airport dividend this year is going to be obviously non-existent. And you really, the revenue you receive from Port Nelson, that should be your capital expenditure every year, without a doubt. I mean, I think when you start reducing staff and cutting costs on something, I mean, that's, you're just adding to the people who are out of work and things like that. I mean, there's core projects that should be continued on. I'm not too sure about collecting letter sleeves with an e-bike is a bright idea. I mean, if you're going to do that for the whole town, it's $11 million a year that the council needs to find money for. So that's not a business, I'm afraid to say. You need to look at things that aren't a business, that aren't your core projects, I'm afraid. And that's what every business in New Zealand is doing today. Otherwise, there wouldn't be any redundancies, would there now? So, I mean, that's, I'm just telling, I deal with a lot of people that own businesses. I'm talking to people around the country, and this is the noise. I mean, we're not going to know. I mean, if you look in the rear vision mirror in 12 months' time and Nelson's not been hit hard, that's a great outcome. There's vulnerable people here. I was in the supermarket on Sunday, heard a well-dressed lady and a daughter could not afford to pay for their food, having an argument. And I looked at them and thought, man, that's a bit different. I haven't heard that before in Nelson. But yeah, there's cost cutting can be done. You need to look at your projects on your wish list and go essential and not essential. Ego project or not. It's pretty simple, guys. It's like at home. You still need the groceries. But, I've talked to business people today in the last few days doing good business. Actually, they're doing very well. The bounce back's been has been very good. It's great. It's good for the town. It's good for our province. I think in this province we're going to be, except for travel agents, of course, and bars and restaurants at this time. That's pretty grim. Anything tourism is grim.
Thank you, Warren. We don't have any further questions, but we appreciate you coming to speak to the submission, and we will be doing our deliberations a little bit in a couple of weeks' time and take on board your feedback. So thank you.
Good afternoon. Thank you.
Thank you. Next submission is Tim Morisgalski speaking on behalf of Tim's Garden, and you'll find the submission on page 15 of your agenda. Kia ora, Tim. Welcome to the meeting. We've read your submission. It's an opportunity to highlight any key points. You've been allocated 10 minutes. If you don't need to use all the 10 minutes, that's fine. And if there are questions, we will include them in that time. So just whenever you're ready.
Thank you very much. And Thank you very much for the pronunciation of Morozgowska. That was very good. It was bang on. So thank you. Bit of a relief. I just wanted to start my, I suppose, the video with just showing you the shop. So we're based on Gloucester Street. We have a combination of businesses that we run here. So we mainly focus on gardens and improving people's landscapes. We offer design services, and now we've sort of launched a shop to sort of engage with the community for workshops and teaching, but also to provide supplies for people. And I thought I would just show you all, in case I know some of you I've welcomed into the shop, but I just thought I'd start by just giving you a quick tour of our little space here. Now, with regards to the submission, I know that you've all sort of read everything through it. I've broken down 2 areas that I think would be important for the council to consider further investment and further opportunity. We've been providing talks to people on things that improve the usage of people's gardens, but also the reducing their environmental impact. So I'm just going to get myself comfortable in the sun, warm myself up a bit. So rainwater harvesting has been identified as an area where people are keen to explore and reduce their footprint.
Tim, unfortunately, you're frozen on us at the moment, or your connection has frozen.
So I'll just get a little bit closer. I've gone just outside of Wi-Fi reach. How's that?
All right, that's better. Thank you.
Excellent. So one of the main feedback that we got from the rainwater workshops that we've been hosting was the barrier to entry was really the startup cost. People were interested in rain tanks. They thought they would have a usage for, and they understood the technology and the benefits, but were sort of put off by the initial sort of startup cost. And during that, those discussions with those groups, whether they were gardeners or avid gardeners or beginner gardeners, there was a real kind of need for what people were sort of, I suppose, in a nutshell, were looking for a subsidy. So one of the proposals I put forward to you is a way of part funding so that people would then have that barrier removed. So they'd get all of the benefits and maybe not necessarily the issue with the initial startup costs. A lot of them tend to be high install cost, but really low maintenance. So I think the barrier really is just that initial startup. So I've identified the potential way that we could explore that. But I just wanted to give a summary as to that, as to why we put those forward. The second was really edible landscapes. We support people in their residential spaces to grow food, whether that's edibles for the kitchen or medicinal purposes, things like herbs, and getting people to really reconnect with seasonal growth of food. We've definitely identified a demand in the market in Nelson. I think we're a unique climate and also a unique community of people that are willing to have that space in their garden for more edibles. But what I've put forward is to integrate that sort of premise to vacant lots or aren't currently managed to put in edible spaces, or designating recreational areas for to transition to have a small raised beds within current parks. So I've broken those 2 projects down for you to have a further look at, so I won't go into too much detail on those, but it's really finding a way of teaching people to be more resilient. I think COVID-19 emergence has really shown us how vulnerable we are to accessing food and not having an awareness or knowledge of how to grow your own. So we would really look at using this as an opportunity to teach, but also to share and to have a bit more of a community presence. Excuse the large truck delivery in the background. So we've definitely shown that Nelsonians are interested in residential spaces, but this would really help to improve community engagement for those sort of local pockets around Nelson, really.
Connection's getting a little bit challenging again, Tim, so you might just need to get a bit closer to your connection. You can?
Sorry, can you hear me?
We
Better?
can. That's a little bit better. That's great. Thank you.
Sorry about that.
No, that's okay.
So, so I've lost my trail of thought now, but it was just about the two summaries of the application. So I suppose I should stop there and take any questions if anybody has any. Thank you for your time.
Thank you. I've got a question from Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to you, Tim, and thanks for your presentation and for what you're doing in our community, particularly the opportunities that you see. With your rainwater sessions that you've been having, what sort of numbers are you getting from them?
So the Marybank community was over 100 people. That was the gardening club out in, that was presented in Founders Park. And then the in-house ones we've kept to about 20, just so that they're a bit more sort of personable, so it's not a big group session, but we'd love to host more of them, but anywhere between sort of 20 and 100. And we ran 3 internally.
That's incredible figures, really. So if you were fortunate enough to get some support from council, you see that growing, and that would be a major event, wouldn't it? You would be running.
Yeah, I think so.
What sort of figures are we looking at? What sort of figures are we looking at for support? What do you anticipate needing?
So if we went with, depending on how big a scale we wanted to look at doing, I'd like to run a pilot of 100 people to have residential applications first as a priority, and then we could look at maybe branching out to more commercial spaces. But 100 residents, if they were collecting at least a 3,000 litre tank, which would it wouldn't provide total resilience during summer droughts and things, but it would provide a sufficient usage throughout the year. Installation costs could be anywhere between $5,000 and $10,000 each, give or take, depending on the sort of irrigation that's needed. But I've put forward here that we could have 125 to 250,000 for those sort of subsidy splits. So depending on the number of pilots that we wanted to run, that would be the rough sort of figure we'd be looking at.
Thank you.
Councillor Sensen.
Hi, Tim. Thanks very much for that.
Sure.
Really great. I'm kind of passionate about rainwater harvesting and edible landscapes. Have you looked for government funding for this kind of thing, especially for the rainwater harvesting? Do you know if there's any kind of central funding?
Not yet. I wanted to focus primarily on using Nelson as the sort of the starter base, really, and seeing. I think so to answer your question, no, sorry.
Yeah, so it might be a good thing to look into, and I can I'll try and do some research as well and see if I can find some options for you.
Okay, thank you.
Tim, thank you very much for your submission and for the tour. And we will be moving to deliberations in a couple of weeks and considering what you've told us today. So thank you.
Thank you. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Our next submission is from Mr. Barry Thompson from Thompson Daly and Company, and you'll find his submission on page 11.
Hey there.
Welcome, Barry, to the meeting. If you want to turn your video on, you can, or you can just leave it as audio.
Well, I'm just asking my girls, I don't use this type of stuff.
Start here. That's it. That's fine.
Is that right?
That's fine, Barry. We can hear you very clearly.
Well, right, I'll start. I'm a constant criticiser of the council. I don't think you'd accept me if I wasn't. 5 minutes for a presentation and questions is a disgrace to all submitters. A sign that you don't want or are not worried about submissions. I've had this before from a lot of very successful local business people who could run your council, the biggest enterprise in the area, probably much better than you people. Under present economic conditions, Nelson City Council should, 1, try to promote retail shopping. 2, cancel all but urgent council capital works. 3, and this is the most important one, reduce commercial rates, and I'll bet you won't. That's what I'm doing in my businesses, and I've got a few of them. Local body staff and councillors have not suffered financially the way local retailers and their staff have suffered over the lockdown, and those people will suffer in the future. And I haven't seen a word in the paper, and I'm a good close reader of the paper. I haven't seen a word about that from the council. Secondly, I presented 5 different matters that required looking into, and I'm going to treat the small ones very quickly because 5 minutes is a disgrace. Narrowing of streets, wider footpaths. This proposal appears contrived by the Nelson City Council staff and was crazy, and I was pleased to see it deferred. To widen the footpaths on never reducing level of pedestrian traffic, because the pedestrian traffic is going to be down, was crazy. Also, the cutting back of car parks in our central city was a no-brainer. You just couldn't believe it. I couldn't believe it. I would point out that a large majority of the Nelson City councillors, staff and mayor don't own much commercial property in the city centre, and therefore, A, they have little big business experience. B, they love spending other people's money. This applies in Australia, Christchurch, wherever it is, and particularly ratepayers, and in beautification matters, ignoring the general public. The car is king in the Nelson region. It is. The worst and oldest drivers in New Zealand are here, I believe. They live here and they need access to the town and also to parking. The council in recent years has been hell-bent on beautifying the city and bringing people to live permanently into the middle of town and have completely lost the plot. The Betts car park, with over 40 car parks, was cancelled and put into residential. Trafalgar Street at the southern end, and I know Mel Courtney was in favour of this and I don't agree with it. Trafalgar Street at the southern end of by the church steps was completely lost to traffic. Now the Church Street car park, a privately owned one, is going to be lost because of the museum buying it, controlled by the Nelson City Council, and they're going to use the land for storage building. The parking meter system. This needs an overhaul, and not in the way the council proposed. I would suggest the meters be eliminated and parking be free. Now, this would affect me and our firm because we provide about probably 200 odd car parks around the town that people pay for. This would need constant policing by a roving warden to determine that, say, 60 minutes absolute maximum was observed. But by doing this, that would certainly bring more car owners into the town. At the moment, of course, or earlier this year, and for years now, the council system of car parking has been stupid. The wardens always stick close to the council building because they go back there for morning tea, lunch, afternoon tea. They hardly ever appear around our area. We're too far away. That'll involve a bit of work and a bit of effort. The inner city rate system, and this is the one I'm really going to go at you on. This needs major alterations. Otherwise, the retail area is going to become less and less occupied. Less shops, less staff serving, and less public purchasing. The inner city rate system, I won't take long on this. The commercial properties, I'll guarantee you councillors don't know this. Commercial properties pay 25% of the total rates collected by the Nelson City Council. Right. Secondly, in the inner city block bordered by Halifax, Rutherford, Selwyn Place and Collingwood Street, a nasty penal system applies and has done so for many years. I prepared submission after submission to the council on this over the years and have received a total bloody rejection. Numerous property owners in the town have also been given the same treatment. As a result, in recent years, I've encouraged, and by golly, I've done this in a big way, I've encouraged numerous of my clients to get out of the city. We've sold several multi-million properties. I sold the old telephone house. It was too close to a bloody council building recently. And we're getting out of all stuff in the middle of Nelson. We've gone to the airport estate where we get penalised a bit, and Richmond. And as a result of this, the years I've encouraged several of my clients to do that, and also our firm to invest outside Nelson City. And now then, number 3. We have several major blocks of land in Gladstone Road, or I suppose I've got about 5 or 6 of them. You wouldn't know some of them. One of these blocks, the Z Energy block, has a, and listen to this, has a government valuation similar to that of our farm products block, one of the few we've got in town now in Halifax Street. Halifax Street Farm Products and Shell are both worth a government valuation of about $5 million each. My trick question that I ask people, and I have yet had one person to get it right, and I've done this for years now, say to them, if the rates in the Shell building or Z Energy building and the other ones there in Richmond, very close to central Richmond, if the rates of those are 20,000, what do you think the farm products ones would be for a property with the same valuation? Or people come and sell 25, 30. No, the rates are 56,000. For every car park that we supply in farm products, we have to pay the Nelson City Council rates a weekly rate bill of approx $6. Every car park there, $6. This really encourages people to use car parks, doesn't it? Last but not least, and I'll finish at this, the inner city pays 31.5% above other commercial properties in the central city. That is, do you know how much it is above residential? It's 265% above residential. That's a bloody disgrace. It's robbery, it's daylight robbery. I have never committed anything through the paper on this because I don't entirely trust newspapers and their fake news, but I think I will soon if you don't wake your ideas up, because this is criminal. It is, it's absolute bloody criminal. So how can you encourage retailers to carry on in town when they're getting slugged all these extra rates? Damon Motors on their corner, they complain all the time because across the road, another property that they own with us, where Suzuki and Thingamavale, they pay about 1/3 of the rates per square metre that Damon's do across where the petrol station is. They're both in the same street, but they're on the wrong side. The other one's on the wrong side, isn't it? Right. I'll leave my case at that.
Thank you. You've used your 5 minutes up very well. There's quite a lot of questions. So what I'm going to do is get the councillors to email those, they'll come in an email form, and then we can deal with those because I know that you'll have a lot of information to share.
You want me to give you a complete copy?
I would really appreciate if you could give us a copy of your submission as well.
Yeah, I can do that.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Barry. We really appreciate the work you put into your submissions. Thank you.
By the way, I have had several queries from other uninformed landowners in town asking me for the statistics. And I'll tell you now, I only finished it half an hour ago because I've got a lot of other things on. I'm very busy.
Thanks, Barry. Really appreciate the time coming in to talk to us today on the work. Thank you. Yep. Our next submitter is Bill Delberg, and you'll find Bill's submission on page 321 of your papers. Kia ora, Bill, welcome to the submission. You've been allocated 5 minutes and I'll hand over to you now. I think you know the drill.
Thanks, Mayor Rita, and thanks, councillors. Submission's been read, I'm sure. Just to cover the main points. Basically, the Whakatu Nelson Plan being an important document for groups wanting to work with Nelson City Council. The key thing here is the increased new cost in the long-term plan. It's in the millions of dollars. And the funding for the increase is over the next few years, and also the change in the process. The Nelson Plan started in 2013. It's over 2 council traineums. It was extended, it was supposed to come out the draft in 2018, extended to a late 2019. And I read now in the latest Nelson Plan, further extension to a very important document. But also the other major point there was the funding was via operation part or optics of the budget, and it was funded by rates. The new staff, now the staff look to be recommending funding through borrowing or an increase in debt, like the Nelson City Council process for capital works. The concern looks like it's a multi-year borrowing with 1.2 million over year 1 And I think it was a challenge to find the figures. I think it's 4 million in total. But it was a challenge to work it out, but it's the change in the funding process. If it was as previously through rates, $1.2 million is approximately 1.5% increase in rates, i.e. you go over top of your allocated, I think it's 4.3, 4.4% rate increase. The key thing there was if it's borrowing now going to be an increase in debt, then that only adds about less than 0.5. So what it might look like, and the concern for me, is that the council are appearing to manipulating the funding process. That is a change from the previous 6 years. And this is for a blown out project, time-wise and staff activity. So that's one of the concerns. And I just want to make sure that the new councils are aware of that. And it was one of the projects that Mayor Rees pointed out when I came in there. It was very important. We put a lot of time into that. So it is a concern to me. And more importantly, it's very useful for groups out there, business people, etc., that actually want to work with the council. It's all about efficiencies. So I think I've stated my point there. I'll leave it to questions.
Thank you. Any questions for Bill? Councillor Edgar.
Thank you, Mayor Rachel. Hi, Bill. Just in relation to, you mentioned how important the Nelson Plan is, and of course, the delays are not new for this term council, as you have acknowledged, but it is the key document for planning and for the future for the district, but also specifically for developers, businesses, etc. So due to those very reasons, do you not see that it has an enduring value that actually makes it essentially a capital project that has enduring value?
I think you could say that if you wanted to actually change the process of funding. The truth of the matter is most of the work the council do are multi-year projects. They're all multi-year funding, and we could make that case for everybody. But this is about staff activities to do with a project that is consultants, councillors, etc. working. I don't see this as a capital. This is nothing. This is a document like every other document we do. Planning and regulatory documents we've done in the past. It seems a matter of convenience for me. Now that to me is the challenge, because then it actually means the councillors are losing a bit of credibility. That's something we don't want happening.
Sorry, I was on mute. Thank you, Bill.
Cheers.
Thank you, Bill. There's no other questions. I think your submission was very clear. Thank you for taking the time to come in and speak with us today.
Can I add one other thing, Rachel? I've got a bit of time.
Yes, you do.
More just on the credibility factor, just to help you out. Some of you might have missed it. Suggestions on the rates going to zero increase. And one of the savings was 1.5 million not meeting the contribution to the emergency fund. That was another one of our projects we had to build up from the last time we had that emergency. My concern is that if you don't put that money in, you just need to watch out. One of the activities we moved last time, the council moved last time, was the climate change emergency. And you'll notice in your own documents that one of the mitigating factors was the Nelson City Council's emergency fund. So I just don't want everyone getting caught and the council losing a wee bit of credibility, not putting money in a fund that's actually helping to mitigating factor in the climate emergencies. Other than that, all the best to everybody.
Right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you very much for coming in.
Thanks, Bill.
All right, we've now got a 5-minute break, so we will stop for 5 minutes and we'll be right back right on 5 minutes. I'll be starting again, so it's basically a 3-minute break. If that will be all right, and we'll see you in a couple of minutes for us to get underway again.
Video, Gail. Can still see you go. Oh no, she's gone now.
Councillors, I'll just ask you to turn your videos on when you're back, just so I can make sure I've got a quorum. All right, I think we can get underway again. I think we've got a quorum there. That's lovely, thank you. All right, so Natalie isn't here yet, but Peter Taylor is here. And Peter's submission is on page 338 of your papers. Peter, welcome to the hearing.
Thank you.
Hope you can hear me all right.
I can hear you fine, thank you.
Excellent. All right, so we've read your submission and you've got 5 minutes allocated today. Opportunity to highlight any key points or add any additional information, and there may be some questions for you from the elected members.
Good as gold, thank you very much. What I mostly wanted to talk about was Council's position on climate change and the absence of a clear strategy in the annual plan. From what I can see is that you have a fund $500,000 in reserves and $250,000 climate change fund. So you've put aside $750,000, which is a beginning, and you've also going to appoint one person. And I want to encourage you all to do a hell of a lot more than that. If you go out to the community and you just have open slather consultation with the community, you all know as well as I do that you will have every lobby group and ongoing discussions that are not particularly focused, and it'll be a long, drawn-out process that won't get you probably very far. So I want to encourage you to set up a climate change policy team, either by employing more people or seconding some of your existing policy people. And I'd like to see goals such as the development of a city climate change plan, because you know as well as I do that you're going to have some sort of plan eventually that has it. I want to encourage you to have your policy people to go out with some principles first of all. So your principles might be something as simple as the council will do whatever it can, where practical and financially feasible, to mitigate flood risk, for example. You might have half a dozen principles that you take out to the community before you even begin to write rules or consult on detail. I want to encourage you to have a policy team to set up some principles upon which you will eventually write some proposed rules and consult on them and then flesh them out. I think what you've done so far is declare a state of emergency, which is starting to look a little bit like a marketing ploy, and one person is really very low resources for the state of change that is going to happen. I think also it's disappointing. We could have had a map, for example, now of Nelson that you could be consulting on the flood zones, for example, because flooding is going to be probably the most prominent symptom, if you like, of climate change in the next 50 to 100 years. So I'm wanting to register my disappointment that your start is to put aside a fund. That's quite good, but one dedicated staff member is not sufficient. You need a strategy team, and you also need a comms team so that you can begin taking out principles, a few principles and consulting, possibly initially with the leaders in our community, industry leaders, community group leaders, before you start to drill down into widespread community meetings, which will really be a waste of time and money and resources at this stage of the development. That's my bit on climate change. The only other thing I wanted to say was buses. I've been trying to, buses also, as you know, is an incredibly difficult issue. In your annual report of 1819, it says that the 417,918 patrons. I'm not sure what a patron is. The annual report is a rather obscure document. I'm assuming a patron is a ride. And that equates to around about 1,100 rides per day that Nelsonians are taking on the bus. And I assume a good number of those are grey people who hold the Super Gold card. So it looks roughly from the figures that I can garner that there's probably somewhere between 500 and 1,000 people, if we're lucky, using Nelson buses a day. You probably have those accurate figures. Mine are just guesses, I'm afraid. If that's the case, putting aside several $1 million is not a good use of money for such a small percentage of our population. So that leaves the question of how do we get more people on buses, let alone do we even have the sort of bus service that we've got. Speaking as a former executive staff member of a regional council who implemented a electronic bus ticket for the Otago Regional Council, I can tell you that it didn't increase patronage very much at all in Dunedin. It was obviously convenient and people liked it, and you could just flash your card and that's fine, but it didn't increase numbers. So from a cost benefit point of view, it was not such a great investment. What increased numbers in Dunedin was having more frequent services and more faster services. So when I was working in Dunedin, there was a rule once upon a time that said a bus had to go within 500 metres of every household. And that meant that a trip that you could take that took 20 minutes by a car to get into town took 1.5 hours by bus. So of course nobody used it. So as far as buses go, I would like to encourage you to really fully investigate an expressway. Most of Nelson's problems, as you know, come from commuter traffic and school traffic. And if we could get a limited expressway where buses were coming in from Nelson to Richmond and were able to have a lane for 1.5 hours a day. I know this is difficult. Residents are going to have to give up parking for a limited time, etc., etc. You may be able to increase patronage. In the absence of that, because you say patronage has gone up 5.1% in the annual report, I really think you should go back to the community and say, we're spending gazillions of dollars on buses. Not many of you are using it. What other ideas are there? Because if, as you say in the annual report of 1819, that 19% of people walk, run or cycle to work, that is quite an extraordinary figure. Nearly 1 in 5 people, I don't know whether that figure is correct or not, it seems to me fantastically high. 1 in 5 people walk, cycle or run to work in Nelson. That's what your annual report says. If that's correct, and let's say 800 people use the buses, you'd be better off to spend your money on 500 electric bicycles. And if you could get more people onto electric bikes and save a couple of $1 million on the bus and then get a contract with the taxi service, you'd be doing something far better than keeping empty buses driving around Nelson with 3 or 4 people on them. So I'm really saying first priority for bus expenditure might be to really see if we can get an expressway going. If that's too hard or impossible, I'd like you to do something like I've asked with climate change and go back to the community with some principles. Of course, lots of people have lots of stuff to say about buses. Most of them don't use buses. And so you need to have a really full and frank discussion about whether people want to spend several $1 million a year on having empty buses going around Nelson. I'll leave it there. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. We're over the 5 minutes, so thank you for a very thoughtful submission. The questions, we'll just get those emailed through, and I know that you'll be able to give some very thoughtful responses to those as well. Appreciate your time. Thank you.
Thank you. Cheers.
The next submission is, thank you, Peter. The next submission is from Natalie. I'm going to have a go at this, Lachaze Campbell, but if I've got the pronunciation wrong, Natalie, I'm very sorry. Natalie shouldn't be too far away. She was there.
Through the chair, we're still working on bringing Natalie.
Thank you. You'll find Natalie's submission on page 392 of the papers. Welcome, Natalie.
Oh, yes, good afternoon. Sorry for the condition and the hiccups on the technology side of it.
Okay, that is okay. We can't see you. Are you able to, would you like to turn your video on, or would you just like to do an oral submission?
The fact is the situation, I'm on my phone in my car.
Oh, okay, that's fine. Well, we can hear you very clearly. So just when you're ready, we've read your submission. So you've got 5 minutes allocated, an opportunity to highlight any key points, and there may be some questions.
Okay, brilliant. Thank you very much for allowing me to do this. I'm sorry for the technical I hope they're not going to let me go. Zoom let me go for twice. So hopefully it'll go well until the end. I hope you understand my accent. So my name is Nathalie Lacasse Campbell. So I'm speaking on behalf of Bicycle Nissan Bays, but also on my behalf. To tell you a bit more about myself, I am also part of a project in Wakefield about the Wakefield Bus, which is the Nelson Tasman Community Transport Trust. And I've also investigated some bike sharing in Dunedin and things like this. So I've been in New Zealand since 2003, moved to Nelson in 2017. So for the submission, I obviously didn't have much time to say, but I wanted to support what I said. Regarding the sustainable transport culture, which I think is fantastic. So we want to support the transport culture, as I've said, but I would like to reiterate that it seems essential that the last decades and more than that, we needed cycle lane, which I think Nelson has done very well. When I was in Dunedin, we were really looking up to Nelson's, and that's great, but there's still quite a few things to do, we think. So for the biker to be safer and pedestrian and all people being able to move around safely. So really what was good is that the project in Taunanui, I think, was a really good project. And I think things like this is nice for us to see that we're sharing the past. Some people are not happy about it, I can understand that, but as you can hear, I'm French and I've been seeing it quite a lot of places, and I think it's a good start to actually opening up to allow people to move safely. For me, it is essential, and I think for us, it is essential that we reduce the dependence on the car. And I know it's not an easy thing task to have, to avoid giving the space and more space to the car, because the more space we give, the more space there is. So I think maybe one should learn how to use a car responsibly, and maybe that should be part of the next thing I want to say about the behavior change. I know I've been saying that before, but I live in Stoke and I hardly come to Nelson any longer. And yes, I do have a car. I'm in it right now, and I try to not use it. I only use it, and I try to put everything on one day and come to Nelson and do my thing, because I find it very difficult to park and move about in the city centre. So we want to support a stronger effort that promotes the behavioral change on travel choices and increase accessibility to active transportation, and integrate the transport for people living outside the CBD as well. So can you still hear me?
Yes, we can, Natalie. It's like 2 more minutes to go.
Okay. So I live in Stark and I hardly come to Nelson, as I said just before, and I'll use it for my work, so I find it quite difficult. But if you give me if you give me and some people the chance to afford the public transport, let's say on a subscription model that guarantees me to have a bus ride wherever I want, and the chance to take a bike for short journeys, not necessarily on the bus, but already at destination, like bike sharing, because I am very keen on these things. Maybe more people would actually find the possibility to replace the car by the public transport, which is integrated. So through a subscription, instead of buying a ticket there and there, which accumulating can come to a high number of a high amount of money. So if we created an experience also in Nelson with a flowing fit and a seamless integration and a safe, protected network, then I and many other people would maybe make the effort to actually jump on it. The other thing I want to add is, so we support the development around the city centre, a walking area and an active transport clearly close to car traffic. So the city centre development, we support walkable Nelson without the car and car parks, the smart development that would enhance resident access to the city centre, and of course a livable centre. Nelson City Centre should deliver an experience, as I said before, but not just a shopping centre. And in terms of increasing the economy, it's startled me to see that Nelson has a sort of an invisible curfew when I come here in 2017, there was no buses after 7 p.m. somehow, not as accessible as it should be. And so the evening light and the stroll about in the city center is almost inexistent for some people that live away from the center. So our economy needs to turn around and focus on our domestic travels and local residents to take place in this economy. And so we need to be able to move freely, or maybe develop the centers outside the city centers as well. I am from Lyon, where in 1999 they decided to change completely the transport system in the city center. And what they did is they closed off the whole of city center to cars and put more buses, bike lanes everywhere, and especially they started to put something called a contraflow in parallel street, in quieter street, where people could actually take a bike in the opposite direction of the either car or bus that was coming through. And I tried it and I found it quite effective for actually see what's coming in front of you rather than turning around, lose balance, to see what's coming in the back of you. The other thing we support is the speed limit to be lowered down, especially around the schools. I want to add, because I know that I'm running out of time slowly. I live in Stoke, as I said before, with my children, one going to Neyland College, and the one to Broadgrey Intermediate, and the one to Nelson Boys. And there's a few issue there, and some can be actually solved without much fundings, I would say. A change of rule, a few sign reinforcement could actually bring peace of mind to traveling children in bikes and pedestrians around. What I want to say is that if we block the street for, let's say, 30 or 45 minutes to an hour at the morning and the finish of school, then people will uptake and probably move a lot more freely with a peace of mind. Some people will start to be organized about cycling and make cycling buses and walking buses. Many countries have done that everywhere to try to slow down and prevent cars. In area like Quiet Street, they close street at certain time of the day. And I think the cycle via in Colombia is actually still doing it, and they close every Sunday, I think. And people are looking forward to their time where they can actually occupy the streets that are no longer with cars. I think would be good to start with something like this.
Thank you, Natalie. We're quite a little bit over the 5 minutes, so any last comments?
Okay, so I'll just add my last thing. So investing in developing better access to services that are pushed back away or walk away will benefit the road traffic. If you develop the centers outside of the city center, less people will need to come to town as well. But as it is not new and it's the same now, is a chance to implement serious solution to our current place and to become a leading place for people that will enable the new world and our younger generation to remain here and to fuel our economy. So sorry it took so long.
No, that's okay, Natalie. Thank you. Thank you for a very comprehensive submission, and I'm sorry we couldn't see you in person, but I'm glad that you managed to connect with us today via Zoom. We don't have any questions, but that's a reflection of the comprehensive submission. So thank you for joining us.
Thanks a lot for having me. Have a good day.
Bye-bye. You too. Now, councillors, our next submission is from Kate Malcolm, and just to update you, Mr. Robert Stevenson is cancelled today. He won't be coming in, and Mr. Gear Thompson has moved his time to 4 p.m. So the next submission is from Kate Malcolm. Kate will join us in a moment.
Just check.
Welcome, Kate. I can.
Kia ora, Rachel.
Kia ora, Kate. Nice to see you.
To see you. I can see only you, but that's
okay.
I can't see your colleagues, but never mind.
Okay, they're there. I assure you they're there. Okay, we've read your submission, so you've got 5 minutes allocated today, and I think you're familiar with the process. Thank you.
Well, I'd like to mention that we've recently experienced a real emergency, and the climate emergency that you declared bears no relationship to the response to a real emergency. And to me, the climate change is a real emergency, but your response has not been very noticeable. I'm just going to pinpoint one particular thing that constantly bugs me as an elderly cyclist, but a person who sees a lot of school children on bikes. It is the safety of these busy roads serving schools that don't have continuous cycle lanes. I've said it before, but look at Vanguard Street. You're tempted to bike up Vanguard Street because there's a wide shared footpath. That disappears, and then you go onto an exceedingly narrow strip between parked cars and moving cars. That's a death trap. It's a death trap or I won't say created by you, inherited by you. And it is something that you have the power to change. If there were, say, 15 people inconvenienced by having their car parks removed, how many people's safety would be guaranteed because they could now cycle safely up Vanguard Street? It's the same in Waimea Road. During the crisis, the COVID-19 lockdown, I cycled on Waimea Road. It's my most convenient access into town. I can't cycle there in normal times because it's too dangerous for me. And by dangerous, I mean it feels dangerous. And so I'm not willing to risk my life. And I feel exceedingly nervous about children whizzing down there who are not as nervous as me, but less skillful, perhaps. So the children lack the skills, the oldies lack the tough nerves, and we are a segment of the population you should be looking after, especially as we have not decided to use our cars. We're doing all we can for the climate, but we do not find any cooperation within the council. They will make every excuse for not removing car parks. I heard one of your previous speakers say, car park is king. That needs to be changed. Car park was king. It is no longer king. There was a much more important imperative at play here. It is the future of the younger generations. It's inequitable that they should have to pay for our mistakes now. And it's the mistakes that you're making today. You can change Waimea Road with a bit of paint. And you can change Vanguard Street. You can change Niles Street. Take out the angle parking. Who is going to bike behind angle parked cars outside schools? The school children? Well, if they do, they're putting their lives at risk. They will bike on the footpath if their parents allow them to bike at all. Main Road Stoke has got the cycle lane turned into a place for selling. Private sales of camper vans, firewood, cars. That's a car sales yard where it should be a cycle lane. And when you go into the Tasman District Council part of that roadway called Salisbury Road, there is continuous cycle lanes all along the road. Why not in Nelson? Thank you. I think I've said that before. Hope I don't have to say it again.
Thank you, Kate. We've got two questions, one from Councillor Courtney and one from Councillor Sansa.
Thank you, Madam Mayor. Through to Kate, thank you for your presentation. Can you expand on your thinking or your suggestion of a congestion charge?
Yes, certainly. Certainly, because both Peter Olrenshaw and myself happened to hear a very, very convincing case made for congestion charging. And this was a group, I think it used to be called Round Table. Are you aware of that group, Mel? Used to be called the Round Table, now it's called something else. And the thinkers or policymakers in that group came up with a paper that was to do with the efficiency or effectiveness of congestion pricing, they called it, particularly if the proceeds were given to benefit the motorists, Mel, if you get what I mean, not to penalise them. So in a way, you're trying to you're trying to regulate the decision-making of car drivers, but not in a way that penalizes them or makes them feel grumpy. And this paper did indicate that although there would be resistance to these congestion charges initially, long-term they were accepted because everybody could see that they worked.
Thank you, Kate. Very quickly, Councillor Sanson, a question.
Well, thank you very much, Kate. Really great presentation. I'm also a dedicated cyclist for transport, so I understand your concerns. I'm just wondering, Kate, have you had or do you hear or have you heard of many of your peers who have had near misses?
Yes, we often hear those stories, and one of them was a boy on Waimea Road who was knocked off his bike. He broke his arm, and when I spoke about this before, somebody asked me, you know, was he badly hurt? Well, he broke his arm, but that's not the point. He wasn't killed. But the point is, will he bike again? And the other point is, will the people who saw that he broke his arm and fell off his bike, will those parents want their children to bike? So it's basically, it's not only, yeah, and near misses where people have, well, my own grandchild had a near miss, and he did continue to bike, but basically parents, I mean, they don't want to risk their children's lives. I'm amazed any parent lets their kid ride along Waimea Road.
Thank you. Thank you very much. That was a very clear submission, and you've highlighted some key areas for improvement. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your attention, Rachel. Enjoy the afternoon.
I will. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thanks, Kate.
The next submission is from Amy Kennedy, and Amy's submission you'll find at page 298 of your papers. Oh. Kia ora, Amy. Welcome to the hearing.
Kia ora. I've got Tom and Ellie here as well in the back. So yeah, we acknowledge the earth that we share and the people who have gone before. We acknowledge ngā iwi o te tau ihu awaka a Māui as tangata whenua, and we acknowledge all who make this place their home now and in the future. So greetings to Rachel and councillors and the staff in the background there. Thank you for this opportunity to speak to our submission. We're very pleased that the Nelson City Council declared a climate emergency and is committing to providing a climate change reserve fund for Nelson. We would like to see a coordinated approach to our regional food systems, and we need to design programs that improve existing practices and encourage and develop innovative ideas around regional food education, production, access, distribution, and waste management. And I believe you've heard some submissions already from projects and other submitters around some of this work. We need programs that inspire young people, horticulturalists, farmers, home gardeners, and community gardeners to learn and take action for growing food in a way that regenerates and builds soil. These programs will also provide livelihoods for food-based social enterprise and small businesses. When we care for the soil, we care for the people, other living things, and the life-sustaining processes of this one planet we all share. When we care, food connects us to Earth and connects us to each other as a human race. There are a number of outstanding examples of collaborative community-based projects in Christchurch and other places that we can learn from. And I am in connection with Food Resilience Network in Christchurch, and I'm working with them currently with the Germinate Collective. So in our submission, we encourage the council to provide funding, whether from local or government sources, to allow for the initiation and continuation of regional community urban growing projects, and would like to see this added to the long-term plan. By being able to source food locally, build community, and be the kaitiaki of our local land, we're able to increase resilience, decrease the carbon footprint of our food, and help to sequester carbon in the soils. Caring for our soils can mitigate the effects of drought and extreme weather events that we have experienced recently and will continue to experience. Let's celebrate the abundance that our region provides. Let's enhance our regional food story and inspire and support the citizens to make it a truly smart and nourishing little city. Thank you for listening, and are there any questions?
Thank you, Amy. I'll just hand it to see if there's any questions from the elected members. It was a very clear submission, so if there are no questions, don't be offended by that. There are not. It was a very, very clear submission, so thank you. Unless there's anything further that Tom or Ali want to add.
No, not at the moment.
All right.
No,
Okay.
no. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much. Thanks for coming on. Thank you for the submission.
Bye.
Now, next in our list, we have John Higginbotham, and I'll just check on my chat to see if John is here. John is not here, I'm told. Do we have anybody else who's waiting? I don't believe we do at this point. No, nobody at the moment, so we'll wait a couple of minutes to see if John turns up. We're a little bit ahead of time now, so that's good. So maybe we'll have another 5-minute break. So just have another 5-minute stretch, and then we'll be back again. Hopefully John will be there. Oh, sorry, hang on. Anton's with us. Anton is, but he's waiting for someone else. So let's take a 5-minute break, and then we'll come back. Thank you. All right, we've got a few of us here. I'll just wait a little bit longer. Then we'll see if we've got a submitter. Right, we got. Thank you. We'll get underway again. Now, John isn't here yet. I'm sure he's on his way, but Anne Rush is here, and we'll go to Anne, I think, for her submission. So Anne's submission is on page 19. It was a late submission, but you should have had that in your additional documents. And Alison McAlpine is with Anne Rush. So I'll welcome them both into our meeting. Oh, hey.
Hello.
Hello. Hello. Hello. Hello, Anne and Alison. Are you?
Hello, Rachel. Hello, everyone else. It's nice to see you all again. And can I empathise with the days you're having and listening to the annual plan? So it's a good job you're doing. We've really appreciated researching the annual plan and aligning our makeshift spaces to some of your key objectives, and Anne's going to respond to those specifically shortly. This new environment that we find ourselves in gives us a great opportunity actually for collaboration and joint ventures, especially around the inner city enhancement. And to visiting New Zealanders' expectation, as Nelson is nominated as one of the places to visit in this new environment we find ourselves in. And also alignment with the arts sector builds on the regional reputation that we have. However, that's everything you know. Can I just check that councillors have our submission?
Yes, we do. It's
Yes.
received as a late submission, but we did receive it. Yes, and we've read it.
Okay, that's great. Do you also have the compilation of the first project photo compilation?
I'll just check with councillors to see if they've got that. Did you receive? They're nodding.
Yes,
great.
Yes, they have. Yes, they have.
That's great, because photos do speak louder than words, and they give you a really in-depth impression. So thanks, folks. I'll pass to Anne.
Okay, well, thanks for the opportunity to present. We've had a very interesting journey for the 18 months or so that Makeshift's been operating. We've managed to get the tools to operate and, the setup of the organisation, and we're really ready to roll now. Obviously, we've been a bit curtailed by the lockdown and things like that, but we just want to signal very clearly that we can continue to rolling out our work in an ongoing and dynamic way. But we are in a new paradigm and a crisis, and not only COVID-19, but we've had extensive stress from artists and arts organisations around the closure of the refinery. So many people have been dislocated from that as well as the art sector being almost shut down, like Nelson's not happening, it'll be happening next year, the Arts Festival. In fact, when we look at the kind of production of arts events in the region, it's going to be so sparse. And but that said, I think there's a growing collaboration happening between the arts sector, and we're coming up with new ways that we could operate in this present paradigm. Another thing we've recently done is signed an MOU with the Nelson Provincial Museum to run out a set of heritage storytelling windows and maybe things on walls that can actually get people walking around the city. And I think that's the other thing that's really interesting is I did a count of the vacant properties last week, and there's almost 40, and that's before the COVID crisis. So they come in all sorts of shapes, but and attributes, these buildings, but there's certainly plenty of, we have a big basket full of projects that are ready to be matched when we can get out and secure more license agreements on these vacant buildings.
I think, as Alison said, the tourism destination thing is really important. If Nelson wants to position itself as a tourism destination, if we can fill up the missing teeth with interesting content like cultural, social, community projects, artists, it's going to make the city more vibrant and more interesting to walk around. Otherwise, what will happen? People, you know, walking down Hardy Street at the moment between Trafalgar and Rutherford is quite depressing. I mean, you've got some great things happening there, but there's a big sequence of empty properties. Talking about Hardy Street, on the corner of Hardy and Collingwood, we're about to roll out a new project which links to your page 13 of your submission, annual plan around intensification and affordability of housing. So there's a social enterprise going in there to run a really interesting program on what is a home and explore all sorts of aspects of that. There's a really dynamic group of people that are very committed to that. So it's I think that's very exciting. It's got great windows, and our design team are going to help fitting out the windows, and that should roll out this week. I think there's a lot in your plan around the smart little city, which I've probably alluded to, and also the inner city development. You know, everything you write about in there around the inner city development, we can obviously help considerably with. And what's been so fascinating is the investment from the council has been added to by all sorts of other pro bono resources. We did a calculation of the value of our pro bono, including the lawyer who wrote the license agreements, and we've got a support of an accountancy firm. Some of our staff have donated time, but probably even more profound, which is not counted in that figure, is of the 10 vacant properties we've occupied since August 2019, when there's been 18 projects, 4 workshops and 4 performances. Only one property owner has wanted any reimbursement. The properties have been totally loaned for the activities that have gone in there. That one property owner wanted a little bit of reimbursement around power. So, I mean, I think I don't want to repeat what I've written, but everything you say about Destination Nelson, Walkable Nelson, we can do things that can help that. And we can actually, you know, link up with all sorts of other people to add value to what you're trying to do. And it's written in the plan. And probably the last thing I wanted to talk about was how can the City Council assist makeshift spaces? We would, if possible, we would love to have a dollar figure in the annual plan to support our services, brokerage services that we're rolling out. This can be negotiated. We haven't put a figure in because we've got a major application to Creative New Zealand, which we'll hear about in 3 weeks. And we've just, on the eve of lockdown, we got a $10,000 grant from Rata Foundation. But going further into the next financial year, you know, we've been making an effort to raise money, but in this climate, you know, there's no guarantee, and we hope we'll be really successful. One suggestion I wondered whether you would even consider is if you would consider a rates rebate or some kind of discount for property owners who sign a license agreement with Makeshift. You know, when I am told about the overheads the property owner is paying, you know, they're loaning us the building, but there's considerable outgoings they have for having an empty building. That would be I think would be a great way of supporting property owners. I mean, this would only be X number of license agreements. We're not talking about every vacant space. Anyway, that is a suggestion. I think, as I mentioned, I think yeah. Oh, someone coming in, are they? Yeah.
No, sorry, that was the 8-minute bell, I think, Anne.
Okay. Oh, well, I think probably covered everything. If there's any questions you would like to ask.
Right. Thank you, Alison and Anne. I've got a question from Councillor Courtney.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, through to Alison and Anne. Thank you so much for the job you're doing, getting tremendous feedback. Really am, and I'm sure all other councillors are too. People are very interested in the displays that you're putting in these makeshift spaces. My question is the interest from property owners sort of building, or is it waning, or is it not the appropriate time to ask you that question?
I think it's a very interesting question to be asking, because it's been a totally amazing experience for me to interact with property owners, because I've been, like I said, astounded by their generosity. But I'm not sure what the new climate will be doing. Like, we have on our committee, we have a young woman who's the property manager for Gibbons. And I know that they're just absolutely inundated with businesses at the moment who are either wanting rates relief or, you know, talking about their. So I think that the paradigm is shifting. It's shifting for everybody. So second answer to that, Mel, would be not everybody's a first adopter. And I think it's now getting to be an evidence that we've got things happening in the inner city, and some of our properties are actually being, the license agreements are being extended. For instance, the one at the Brook one on Hardy Street's just had another 3 months added to it because they have no prospect of anyone going in as a tenant. Yeah, so.
That's all good news. Thank you so much.
Yeah.
Thank you, Alison and Anne. I don't have any other questions from councillors. I think that's a very clear submission, and sort of thank you for the amazing work that you've been doing, and look forward to that creative spirit just thriving, because we're going to need it. I think it's going to be a tough next year for us.
There's probably one other thing I wanted to say is that the council support is actually attracts other people to be support. You know, this fact that you backed us, it gives confidence for other people to back us as well. And anyway, we'll see where we get to.
Thank you both very much, and good luck with that Creative New Zealand application.
Yes, fingers crossed. Thanks, everyone.
Bye-bye. Thank you.
Bye.
Now, the next submission, we'll just go back to John Higginbotham, who is joining us. Now, John's submission is on page 8 of your additional documents. Welcome, John. Welcome to the hearing.
Well, thank you so much.
You've got a PowerPoint for us today, haven't you, John, I think?
There you go. Well, you can see it there now. Why
Yes,
don't we just why don't we hold off on that till near the end?
All right. Okay, we'll come back to that. Right. Welcome.
Yeah, thanks, guys. Appreciate it. You're doing a good job. I know this is difficult to set this long instead of a computer screen. I do it every day. Now I get out in the field too. So anyway, thank you very much, guys. So I'll try to keep it to 5 minutes here. Thank you for the opportunity. So the amount of time given to think about it and comment was a bit short because of the COVID. So therefore, I haven't thought things out real thoroughly, but I thought I'd throw some of my ideas out into the general forum there. And it does reflect a lot on the annual plan, but perhaps also what might be missing from the annual plan. So, but anyway, what I thought I would talk about is the walkability of the city and the livability of the city, and the ideas to have more bicycling and walking through town and making it a more pedestrian friendly and bicycle friendly city. So I think that does, of course, lose car parks when you do that, which has some consequence, but I'm all for it for the most part. I think we need to do one step at a time and have more bus service that would be subsidized, so people therefore don't have to bring their cars. So it's fine if you live in town and you can get around easily, but if you from out of town, which a lot of the CBD depends on, car parks are still needed. I did notice when the Saturday market was closed right before the lockdown, but everything else was still open, that the Montgomery car park was completely full on Saturday, which really surprised me. I thought, oh, it'll just be half full. So that shows you people need it and use it. That leads to something else, but it just shows that parking is important in town. So I'll come back to that in a second. So my item 2 on there is I'm all for more urban residential development. As I see, we may have, 10% of the stores close, and it's important that we have something to fill it. I think that the retail will drop a bit the next 10 years, through all the various online shopping means, et cetera. So it's important to push residential development in the inner city, and that makes it more vibrant, of course. And you guys are all aware of this. From the business point of view, what I do as a civil engineer, and as you know, my company is called Nelson Consulting Engineers. We've been working closely for the last 16 years in Nelson. I do believe, as far as staff, I do believe we need more planners on staff as opposed to privatized planners who often, in some cases, don't know much about the city or the regulations, and it creates a large cost for the people trying to get projects in. So I'm all for increasing the planning team. Have I run out of time already?
No, there's 2 more minutes. 2 more minutes, John.
Okay.
You're fine.
Yeah, I'm a little bit concerned about the removal of unwanted trees in town, and there's no policy. I think that I'd be quite happy to get involved with the policy of how to either remove or maintain trees in the road reserve. It seems like health and safety has gone too far. We are the city of trees. Reduction of public debt for the sake of our children. I think that's quite important. I think we should be thinking about reducing capital expenses and maintenance costs a bit, just for the long-term goal. Preservation of the few remaining heritage buildings. And I had 2 concepts which you may be interested in. The first one you saw was the Bowler's Pond. You can put that online if somebody can control that. I saw it up there earlier. Is it?
It's on its way now. Here we go.
Yeah. So here's an idea we worked on just for the hell of it. I saw the Mahler's Pond and picked it, and I thought, well, why not have a smaller Mahler's Pond and turn the rest into wetlands? So we've drawn this concept which allows good flushing for the much smaller Mahler's Pond. As I said, I'm not sure I said it. It's about the size of an Olympic pool. So it's just basically giving it back to nature and enhancing it for bird life. So that's a concept there, but it's pretty well thought out. I could go into that in greater detail. And the next one, which is more controversial, yeah, that is bringing the Saturday market. You see those blue lines, and you see the orange. That's the Upper Trafalgar Street. So that's bringing the market out into that area, which actually increases the market. So it goes down Church Street. Can I speak another minute?
Yes, you can, John.
Okay. I've shown traffic flow. So, you come down Trafalgar Street towards the church steps, and there's a turnaround up on the upper top of the church, which you would just cone off in the Saturdays. But it allows more room. It uses that little park over there by the post office. There's more space. That blue line represents rows of stalls. The good thing about this is that the net increase in car parks is 120 car parks approximately. I did this years ago, so it's probably changed a little bit, but it's somewhere in that neighborhood. Now I know a year ago, 1 or 2 years ago, they were talking about building a car park structure. So I think that Saturday being the busiest day, this is something council might want to consider as a concept. It doesn't cost that much, and it brings, it adds a lot more synergy to the inner part of the city there. We're losing Briscoe's and Rebel Sport, so maybe it's a good time to do something like this. Now I'm savvy enough to know that somebody once said, "Don't mess with the Saturday market." So Anyway, this is messing with it, but you know, it's a hard sell politically, but I thought I'd throw it out there.
Thank you, John.
Yeah.
What I might suggest you do is you may want to submit that into a consultation process or feedback process. We're about to start actually around city centre as well. So we can put that in for you and we'll come back to you. Right, I'm going to very quickly take two quick questions. Councillor Laurie and Councillor Rainey.
Yes.
Councillor Laurie, you need to unmute Councillor Laurie.
I can go if you want.
How's that?
It's better, thank you.
Thank you, sorry.
That bear's looking good, Pete.
Thank you, Madam Mayor, and good to see you, John. John, some years ago I spent a ski season in Colorado in Vail, and they have a free bus and it gets used all the time. And we had a free bus day last year and our N buses were packed. Do you think that might be, do you think that might be an idea worth exploring?
Well, I think it should be cheap or free. I think we start looking at all the people bicycle, and they're vocal, and that's good. I think bicycling is great. I think we tend to forget about people who can't drive. There's a lot of older people in this community who need to get into town, depend on their cars. There is probably 60% of the people are not thought of, I think, on some of these, the money spent on cycling and cycling type infrastructure, which I'm all for. I just think you need to be a bit more balanced. But I think that's a good idea, Matt.
Thank you, Councillor. Thank you, John. I'll go to Councillor Rainey.
Hey, John, thanks for your submission. And as the Mayor said, I do encourage you to submit when we come out with some options regarding the CBD in early June. But John, I want to ask you a question. I don't need to answer it now, but perhaps ponder on it. We've done some surveys on pedestrians in the CBD, both in winter and in summer, in Trafalgar, Hardy and Bridge Street. And way out in front, 20% more than any other day. The busiest day is Saturday between 10 o'clock and 1 o'clock.
That's right, yeah.
Now, why is that? If the market is completely taken up with market rather than car parks, how come we've got so many more people walking around town? So I'd really like you to think about an answer to that. You don't need to
well, I'll tell you. So here's my colleague who I've worked with for many years. He lives out in Richmond. I go, do you ever come to the Saturday market? He says, no, we can never find a place to park. So I think you ought to look at it as it's a draw for outside people.
Yeah, well, obviously,
not people who are outside of walking distance. And I think the CBD really needs that. So I think you can do both.
Thanks,
John. I think you can,
Okay.
Cool.
Thank you. All right, thank you. Thanks, John, very much for coming in, and thank you for that diagram you put up before as well. It looks very good.
No worries. I'm happy to talk about that anytime, but I'm just, I don't have time to promote things too much in my busy times, but thank you so much. I'll give it a go though. Thank you.
Thank you very much, John. Thank you.
You guys have a good day.
Will do.
See you. Bye-bye.
Now, next submitters are here, so we're just going to keep going, and we've got Ben Bushell is next, and Ben's submission is on page 309. This is the community compost submission. I think Anton is joining Ben as well. I've just had a few messages coming and going, so we'll see who arrives. I can see Ben. Welcome, Ben, and I think Anton's coming in as well. Welcome to you both. Thank you for joining the hearing. We've read your submission. So now's an opportunity to highlight any key points, and if there's any questions, we'll try and fit them into the 10 minutes.
Thank you. Kia ora koutou.
Kia ora koutou.
Can you hear me okay? Okay. Hi, my name is Ben Bushell. I'm the founder and managing director of Community Compost Limited. Thank you for hearing me today, and I'm really grateful for this opportunity to connect with you all. I'd like to acknowledge how difficult this is to be set up, all the technology and things, and I'm really grateful this is still going ahead, and there's definitely some benefits to this too, which has been great. It's been good to keep up with on YouTube. Next, I'd like to thank Nelson City Council for working with us to introduce the bike and trailer collection service for the CBD. We're very excited to partner with you in this way and to start doing some collections emissions free in the CBD. Looking good for that. Okay, next I'd like to record that Community Compost supports and advocates for the following initiatives. Nelson Tasman Climate Forum. We've attended a few meetings, and we have quite a lot of overlaps with our volunteers and in the forum. We continue to contribute and share many of the same objectives, such as education, community focus, and accelerated outcomes. The C40 Good Food Cities. For us, this has to happen as soon as possible, and believe that Nelson City Council has the leadership and foresight to commit to this urgent and actually a very well structured plan to get us where we need to be. And next, all local edible landscapes, community gardens, and regenerative urban farms. We need more of these and less grass, and we need them now. So please consider the social and climate benefits of developing these facilities in Nelson. Thank you for those. And now on to our submission. I'll be intentionally brief and leave some space for questions at the end if you need. And thanks for reading the submission, the paper submission in advance. First, I'll talk about who are Community Compost now. Second, who is Bertha? Third, what is a Bertha commercial composting hub? And fourth, our call for the opportunity to deliver the food waste trial. Okay. Community Compost is a social enterprise. Everything we do impacts social welfare. Our vehicle to deliver these rippling positive impacts is food waste recovery and composting. We offer a food waste collection service with a difference. Our model is shaped to literally feed the local system and not drain it. We're a mentoring platform, a center for regenerative learning. We are providing collective upskilling and enabling local organic food systems to maximize food yields and resilience. We are urgently helping Nelson to become a climate change ready city. We serve the community at every step, and we continue to expand and create meaningful work in a healthy environment for all abilities. We work closely with many local community organizations such as Volunteer Nelson, Te Ara Mahi, Tim's Garden, Waimarama Community Gardens, Victory Centre, Red Cross, Kai Rescue, and of course Nelson Environment Centre. We use the revenue we generate to educate, encourage, collect and support more and more people every week. And we champion home composting and food growing. We're part of a national network called the Urban Farmers Alliance, who advocate for urban farming and composting hubs, there are over 30 similar hubs like ours around the country. We'll share data, business models, skills, and methods, and teaching resources. Going forward, in response to community demand, we're partnering with Waimarama to revive the community gardens and the NEC, which will be discussed in another submission. Community Compost is self-reliant, self-perpetuating, and self-investing. We exist to recover our community resources and return them to our community system at their full potential. Okay, part 2, who is Bertha? Bertha is a modular, scalable, automatic hot composting machine. Bertha can manage the waste stream of around 300 homes and businesses, captures the emissions from the composting process. It's telling me my connection's unstable. Can you hear me okay?
You can. It's a little bit unstable, but it's okay at the moment, Ben.
Okay, thanks. Bertha was built in Nelson by local businesses from recycled materials, which was developed by local technical experts to meet the highest operational standards, and she creates sustainable jobs that come with higher volumes of resource recovery. We designed and built Bertha to address climate change using 3 target markers: air health, soil health, and community health. Part 3, what is a Bertha commercial composting hub? Well, this is a local site where we can place many Bertha composting machines and where our community takes responsibility for its own food waste, and in doing so, its air, its soil, and health. These will be really quick. Number 1, carbon drawdown. Number 2, food and nutrition security. Number 3, biodiversity. Number 4, nutrient recovery. Number 5, local skills and jobs. Number 6, community building. Number 7, water conservation. Number 8, cooling microclimates. Number 9, land rehabilitation. Number 10, air quality. And last but not least, optimism. And all of these things are delivering from a composting hub. And to finish our submission, I'll just speak quickly to the food waste trial. Community Compost is delighted that Nelson City Council has proposed a curbside food waste collection trial. We are ready. We are waiting to deliver this trial using our first Bertha hub in Nelson. Our determination to reduce emissions while producing excellent compost has equipped us with industry-leading knowledge, systems, and infrastructure. We will be happy to donate 50%, which is 63 tons of compost to education, edible landscapes, and urban farm creation projects. We are confident, organized, and capable of delivering this trial. And we will demonstrate how community composting is at the heart of regeneration and resilience. Tēnā koutou. Please ask me questions.
Thank you for your submission. We're just over the 10 minutes. I'll take a question from Councillor Skinner because that's the one I've got at the moment. But if I could ask, would you mind emailing us in a copy of your submission, what you've just read us? Would that be okay? Thank
Absolutely.
you.
Yep.
Councillor Skinner.
Thank you, Ben. Great what you're doing. Why do you think people aren't doing their own composting, as I assume they still are or would have done more so in the past?
Thank you, Tim. People aren't doing their own composting because they are signed up to convenience and the local and just the societal challenges. People don't have time or they don't commit the time to their food waste, so they need to be looked after.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Ben. That connection is getting a little bit unstable, but we've heard pretty much everything that you've had to say in that answer, so thank you.
Okay.
Now you're going to stay, I think, while the Environment Centre's submission is presented, so I'll hand across to Anton. Anton, welcome to the hearing.
Thank you, Rachel. Can everyone hear me okay?
We can, and I'll just let the members know that the submission's on page 283 of your papers. It's when you're ready.
Thank you, Rachel. I'd just like to first acknowledge the council and thank you all for your time today. I appreciate it's late in the afternoon on a gorgeous day and everyone's keen to wrap this up as quickly as possible. So with that, I'll try and make this as timely as possible as well. Team, I've submitted 4 submissions. I'll just list each submission and then I'll speak to 2 of them. The 4 that I've submitted is acknowledging the Climate Emergency Fund that's been created by council. The Environment Centre 100% supports this fund. We're 100% behind the establishment of the Climate Forum. We'd also like to suggest that council consider maintaining a reserve of $500,000 for the fund going forwards. The next submission is the commitment to joining the C40 Good Food Cities Declaration. I believe you've heard many submissions to date, so we'll leave that one and move on, acknowledging that the Environment Centre 100% supports the council's consideration of this. Next is the request from council to support the establishment of a community urban farm pilot. This is something that the Environment Centre is very passionate about and proposes a collaboration led by the centre between Ben Bushell as well as Tim from Tim's Garden, as well as with the support from the Farmers Alliance and specifically a similar program that's well established in Wellington called KaiCycle that we would look to draw the model from, which currently today, this year, from 500 square metres of urban farm has produced over 800 kilos of food, fruit, specifically fresh vegetables. And the model that they're working with is to sell boxes to families at a price point of between $20 and $40. So the objective is to get healthy, good food accessible to our community at a reasonable rate. And I don't need to speak to all the savings that we get through transport miles, etc. by having the term is hyper-local food production. And then the fourth submission that the Environment Centre has presented is rental support for our Kai Rescue program. The program has been, we have been fundraising, but is significant impact on the Environment Centre maintaining the program at the moment, given the rental situation that we're in the process of dealing with and exiting. So yes. I've tried to keep it brief and succinct. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Anton. I'll just check to see if we've got any questions for you. Yes, we do. Councillor Skinner, followed by Councillor Edgar.
None from me, sorry.
Oh, okay. We'll just take your hand down then, Councillor Edgar.
Thank you for that. Anton, I was just wondering, can you explain to me the difference between the community urban farm pilot program and the Waimarama community gardens?
Okay, so community gardens traditionally is about people maintaining their own plot, a small plot, and usually around not having access to some sort of space at home. And obviously in a community area where everyone has different plots that are responsible, and they're often part of a collective. An urban farm is exactly that. It is a space that is all around food production. So the objective being that we grow and sell the food that is produced.
And the community gardens couldn't be modified, or, you know, there couldn't be a shift to that model to encompass this concept?
I would need more information about with the team managing the community gardens to discuss that with them. Yeah. So the objective of the urban farm is, and the model that we would be proposing would be with a farm manager, and then volunteers that come on board to learn and get experience from urban farming, and that's the value exchange.
Okay, great. I mean, it might still be worth the conversation, and of course, Ben would be a good person to talk to about community gardens, I believe, from just hearing him. Cheers.
Thank you. Thank you. Councillor Sansom.
Thanks very much for that, Anton. I just wondered if you had in mind a location for the urban farm pilot. Had you given thought to that?
No.
Okay.
Unfortunately, I haven't. I'll be honest about that. I think it would be a collaboration piece with council as well to look at a location that we would get the best value, because it needs to be relatively central. But what we'd want to do is look for a location that is unused, that we can look to add value to by developing it up.
And then just a quick follow-up question. In terms of rental support for Kai Rescue, what kind of level are you looking for?
We've suggested 40,000 at this stage as rental support. We're currently in a situation where, being transparent, we're being caught between the property that we are in, without naming names, was exchanged by two owners in town, and unfortunately the Environment Centre got caught in the crossfire in between and suffered a 25% rental increase, which is quite significant for a not-for-profit.
Thank you. Councillor Laurie.
Thank you. Really interesting ideas, and thanks, guys. Just playing devil's advocate for a minute, though. New Zealand is really great at producing food, and I just wonder, I wonder if we were to support the setting up of an urban farm, some may see that as council going into competition with our food producers. What would your response be to that concern?
I think there's two sides to that. In the truest economic form, yes, we would be going into competition because we're selling products at a retail value. So that's acknowledged. But the purpose of the urban farm is to educate and promote individuals to grow food at home as well. And so that's the idea of volunteering, that you can come and learn and train and get that education and experience so that people can continue to grow food at home. This provides resilience for the community that was seen through COVID. And I think we just need to check the data on the amount of people that went out and bought seeds and seedlings, etc., and started converting their home plots, which was quite interesting, given that, you know, it does take time. It takes 2 to 3 months for us to see a return on the work that we put into our plots of food at home. So we need to be in front of this rather than reacting to it. So what we need is to have people, to make it part of the everyday, that people do grow basic food at home. And I'll stop myself there, Matt. I was about to get on my bandwagon. I'm conscious of time. So I hope that answers your question.
Thank you, Anton. Councillor Fulton. Oh,
thanks so much, Anton and Ben, for your presentations today. I think some of my questions have already been asked and partly answered. My question was around sites and whether you are looking, whether there's an opportunity for multiple sites, how much space you need when you consider that concept of an urban farm. And also, have you had a conversation with iwi around this idea, particularly as part of the Tita Ihu intergenerational strategy?
The long-term vision would be that we would have multiple sites around Nelson. So the expectation, I mean, you know, in a perfect world, I'd love to see 10 or 20 of these around Nelson and a significant generation of or hyper local food production. That's the vision. No sites have been given preference. As I mentioned before, I believe this is a collaboration piece where we want to look for sites that are maybe disused or underutilized so that we can add value and create value to a location. I think that's also going to be critical to this, and it needs to be close to residences because it's the locals that provide that volunteer support that come on board and make these programs viable. In reference to iwi, no, we are in a dialogue, but no, we have not had a specific conversation. There is interest from them around this space, but it's very much what I'd call top level conversations. I will add that I'm also in dialogue with DHB locally around a pilot in this space too. So not only am I looking for support from Nelson City Council, but I'm looking for parallel support with DHB. And this is around providing healthy food to our community, and as well as DHB, and I've got to be careful here, but are suggesting that we might provide a food box that might have some very easy recipes for people to encourage people to cook food at home. That's other feedback that we've had.
Thank you. Oh, there we go. Thank you. Thank you very much. Thank you both, Ben and Anton, for your submissions and coming in today and answering questions, and we'll be deliberating on these submissions in the coming weeks. So thank you very much.
Thank you for your time.
Thank you. Bye. Elected members, I might just take another submission before we have a break. I've got Mike Ward, whose submission is on page 12 of the additional documents. Mike is with us, so I think we might just take him now if we could. He'll just be brought into the meeting. Not too far away. Mike, if you can hear me, there we go.
I can hear you, Rachel, and my phone is saying, "Can we see you?" Or can we
we can
start your video? But
We can hear you, and you can try
You
starting
can hear
your
me?
video. Yes, we can.
And you can't, can you see me?
No, we can't. No, you need to turn
Because
your
I don't know
video.
how to do this.
Oh, well,
Oh, bugger.
see if you go and have a look down the bottom left-hand side of your screen and see if you can see a little
It's not
video.
really surprising.
Don't worry, Mike. We know what you look like.
Okay.
You might find your connections.
Hang on. Uh, 2 seconds. There's a neighbour next door, I will write.
All right, well, Mike
Can't
gets
see me, Ray, son.
just about with us. Oh, here he is. Well done, Councillor Noonan.
Through the chair, the video is showing as on.
Oh, is it? Okay.
Just
all
about
right.
there.
Well, it's for some reason the video is not working at our end, Mike, although we're told that it looks like it's on. So I think you should just speak to your submission. Oh, here we go. I think you might be away now. Are you?
Shall I run up there and help him?
Mike, what we're going to do is I think you should just speak to your submission. Councillor Noonan's going to hold up a photo of you so that you're joining the meeting, but you just speak to the submission. If you can hear me. Are you still there, Mike?
He's on mute.
Ah, okay. All right. What we might do is take a break now. We'll take a break for 10 minutes, and while we're away for 10 minutes, Robin will see how she gets on, or someone gets on with getting Mike sorted there. So see you in 10 minutes time.
You there?
Hello, Mike. The meeting is taking a break. We'll just
Okay, fine. That's
keep you
fine.
silent. Stay where you are.
Oh, hi, Mike. Can you unmute at the moment just so we can have a chat?
No, I'm unmuted now. Can you hear me?
Yeah, no, I can. So you can hear me okay?
Hear you too. It's lovely to see you, Rachel.
Nice to see you as well. We're not live streaming at the moment. I don't think we are. Maybe we are.
That's okay.
We're not we're recording in a moment. We'll just wait for a
Through
few
the
more
chair,
people
we
to come
are
back.
still live streaming.
Oh, we are live streaming. Oh, it's okay. We're pretty relaxed around here. So we'll just get a few more elected members back and then we'll get underway, Mike. I'll let you know when we're ready to go.
Thank you.
All right. I think we're all okay. Kia ora, Mike. Welcome to the meeting, and thank you for joining us in this somewhat what was used to be an unusual way, but now is all too familiar to us. So, you know the process. So I'll hand over to you, and you can present your oral submission.
Thank you, Rachel. Thank you, Rachel. It's quite a long time since I did any Zooming of any kind. You know. I was sitting in the living room the other day looking out at the hills. But I wasn't looking at the hills. I was looking at 6 high containers out on the reclamation. And the hills were just peeping up above them. I said to my son, you know, if you remove the third of the food that we waste, you probably get rid of one of those containers and take out the stuff that we probably didn't need in the first place. The T-shirts that are replacing T-shirts we haven't, you know, we don't there now, and you could probably remove another container and keep going down, and even with the top, my view is panoramic. And of course, we did that. The wharf wouldn't make as much money, the port wouldn't make as much money, and the wharfies wouldn't work quite as hard. But it's sort of like digging a hole and filling it in again, doing stuff that need to be done. I had a quote in my submission. It's the Ronald Wright quote from A Short History of Progress, brilliant book. He wrote it in 2005. It's the quote is, "We're now at the stage when the Easter Islanders could have ceased their senseless cutting and carving and planted the last tree seedlings out of reach of the rats." He wrote, "If we don't do these things now while we can, the earth will enter an age that will dwarf all of the dark ages of the past." He wrote that in 2005. We're running out of time. Council fortunately has said, hey, this city is going to go climate friendly, and congratulations on that. We're in the fortunate position, far more fortunate than most, of having a plan that may help us to avoid that age of chaos and collapse that would dwarf all previous dark ages. It's Nelson 2060. Nelson 2060 tells us what we need to do, and I have offered before to write the next edition, which is Nelson 2030, because we want to get us. And that's the document that inspires and excites. And it's not just council's plan, it has to be the city's plan, the educators, the businesses, the families. There needs to be a copy on every living room and every classroom, so that when people do anything, they're saying, hey, how does this add to the place we want to be? How does this contribute? I've talked in my submission about consensus. Trust is key to leadership. The first goal in 2060, by the way, is a leadership goal. And leadership requires trust. So all need to trust one another and listen to one another, and listen not for the things you disagree on, but the things that you bind you. And I have no doubt whatsoever there's not one among you who doesn't want to live in the kind of city that I want to live in, or that most of the people in the city would agree on. And focusing on those things is your challenge. And when people hear you listening, talking the same language and nodding at one another, people who don't necessarily know it all the time, they're going to like you, and they're going to like what you say, and they're going to come in behind you. I've talked about making things happen simply, having just a very small ginger group. I heard the submission before about the guy who wanted to do community food farms or some such, and I'm thinking, no shortage of land. It's just a team. Not that you're going to have to do it, not that even you have to pay, but how do you enable them to take it on themselves? Resourceful, community workers, know a little bit about fundraising, but throw the task back to those individuals who have those good ideas. I've talked about housing. I don't think we're going to have any shortage of housing now. I think all those Airbnbs that aren't fully going to get filled be turned into a accommodation for folk who live here, and that's no bad thing. But what it does do probably is mean there's a whole lot of other opportunities to use inner city space that might disappear, and that's a bit of a worry. The tourism, well, tourism is something we're going to be pretty good at, actually, I think, because I noticed the other day in the news there were 3 destinations that people in New Zealand wanted to go to. One was Queenstown, one was the Bay of Islands, and the other was Nelson. So we need to build on that. And I've talked about Nelson being the gourmet outward bound experience. So you come here and go away fit enough to run a marathon, perhaps a course at the NMIT at the same time that tells you the science behind what you're doing. Or onshore scenic seasickness, and you come here and for those who like their lives organized, and you go away not just having had a good time, but knowing about what it takes to live sustainably and well, because I think that needs to be the key to 2060, is that everybody here lives brilliantly. Others talk about sustainability. I talk about sustainability and lifestyle. We can't have at least as much fun there. We can't have at least as much fun with one another on the planet. Not enough of us are going to make the effort. That's right. But I think the key to doing it well is having a vision that everybody aspires to. Now, it doesn't have to be me that writes it, but I'm happy to help.
Mike, thank you. The connection is a little bit wobbly, but we received most of that submission, and thank you for your the written submission that we've received. It's comprehensive, as I would expect from you, and thought-provoking and inspiring. So it's really appreciated. I don't have any questions from the elected members today, but that I think is because the submission itself is says it all. So it's lovely to see you, and thank you for joining us. And one day we might get to see you in person again.
Thank you.
Now, our next submission, I think we have, hopefully, we have our representative evidence-based eating group, and I think we've got, I'll just check with Robin, chat here. I think we will have Dr. Luke Wilson, Grant Dixon, and Peter Barclay with us, and possibly a couple of other people, but we'll see how we go. So I can see Peter and I can see Grant, and Luke's just on his way, I think. Video is about to start.
Should be, yeah. Well, I can start and I'll introduce Luke, if that's all right.
Welcome. Kia ora.
Kia ora. Shall I start? Okay, and apparently some slides that we've submitted to you. Can they be brought up, please? First one.
Here we are.
Great. Okay, well, basically now, hold on, this has just caused me a problem because it's gone into full screen. Okay, I've got it now. So basically, a word about who we are. Evidence Based Eating is a new organisation. We formed literally a couple of weeks ago in the middle of lockdown. We're now incorporated. We're a committee of about 12 doctors and medical experts and enthusiasts like myself. I'm the chairperson of the committee at the moment. And we are very keen to tell of the benefits of a whole food plant-based diet for the planetary health, but also for personal health. For a quick example, myself had a heart attack 10 years ago. I have now 4 stents around my heart. But I went to a plant-based diet 9 years ago, and now I run all over the place. I ran 7Ks the other day. I'm about to run after this meeting for another 5Ks, and I'm in really good health. And this could be the experience of all of us if we change our diet. But anyway, I'll let Dr. Luke Wilson talk about this further. But we are submitting because we think that the Good Food Cities aligns very well with our vision. And we would like to encourage you to become an example to the rest of New Zealand, quite honestly. And then once you've made the move, then we'll encourage other cities to do the same. But anyway, let me just pass over to Luke and he can take it from here. Sorry, we should be on the third slide now. So if you can just click through to the third slide. And that one there. Okay, Luke, are you there?
Yeah, I am. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
You can, Luke, welcome. And if
Can
you
you
can
see
just,
me?
let me just go down my little reel here and see if I can speak. No, your video's not displaying at our end, but we can see the PowerPoint. And so if you just let us know
Okay, sorry
what
about
the
that.
slides, yeah, just
I'm
let us
having
know
to
what the
hotspot off
slides
my
changed.
phone.
That's okay.
So if we go to the next slide, please. So this is where we'll start. And so as you've probably heard from previous submissions, at the moment, we're facing sort of multiple crises which are intersecting and exacerbating each other. And this is known as the syndemic, consisting of a health crisis. Particularly in New Zealand, we have this epidemic of diet-related disease and obesity. And then, of course, climate change and the environmental factors. So climate change itself can be considered a pandemic because of its sweeping effects on the health of humans and the natural systems we depend on. And of course, as doctors and healthcare professionals and health advocates, we feel compelled to act on this because we see climate change as a major threat to human health. And the third part of this, which you can see at the top, excuse the misspelling, but we have the obesogenic environment, which is also causing health inequality, which I'll talk a bit more in detail about later. But as you'll probably be aware, in Western countries at least, the public health challenge has really flipped from being a situation of undernutrition in the last sort of 50 to 100 years into a situation where we actually have overnutrition. And this environment has a relationship between environmental factors such as inequality, which dictates largely what people eat, and it's also tightly correlated to our poor health outcomes. So that's the bad news, but the good news is that all of these issues, in fact, have a unifying solution. And anything, if we implement policies that help us shift towards the planetary diet, we can help to tackle each of these issues at the same time. Next slide, please. So warnings about the impacts of climate change from worldwide bodies, including the IPCC, WWF, and WHO, are obviously becoming increasingly urgent and united. And next slide, please. And so a healthier diet across the population, which would include more fruits and vegetables, less red meat, less saturated fat, would not only cut our agricultural emissions, but it would also lower our risk for many diseases, including cancer and heart disease. And this is one of the things that evidence-based eating is very interested in. And next slide, please. So this slide, I'm sure you've seen at least 5 times already this week. So you'll be familiar with the Lancet Planetary Health Plate, and aware that it consists mainly of whole plant foods with low amounts of animal-derived and processed foods. Next slide, please. So this is really interesting, and this is a more recent study, and it's obviously looking at the health and environmental impacts of our food choices. And what you can see here is this really exciting synergy between the fact that, the more healthy our foods are for us, the better they also are for our planet, and vice versa. And so basically this, diets based, like the Planetary Health Plate suggests, around the fruits, vegetables, whole grains and legumes have the lowest impact on the environment, but they also promote human health. And as a general practitioner, this is really an area of interest of mine. Probably, I saw 9 patients this morning session, and of those 9 patients, about 7 of those 9, their health problems were directly related to dietary causes. So that's what we're dealing with. Next slide, please. Has it moved over yet? Sorry,
Yes, it is.
here we go. So Just talking a little bit more now about health inequality in particular, as you're probably all aware, New Zealand, Aotearoa New Zealand has the third highest rate of obesity in the OECD. But what you may not have been aware of is that adults living in the most socioeconomically deprived areas were actually 1.6 times as likely to be obese as adults living in the least deprived areas. This means that it's disproportionately affecting our Maori and South Pacific population. And Professor Boyd Swinburne at University of Auckland, who's part of this Informas group, he estimates that about a fifth of our healthy life years that are lost is caused by our unhealthy diets. So why does obesity disproportionately affect the more socioeconomically deprived? Obviously, the obesogenic environment that we've talked about before, essentially there's multiple factors and relationships between these that constrain access and choices, I suppose, of healthy, nutritious food. So these can be time, money, targeted marketing. So Boyd's group has found also that there's more advertising of unhealthy foods around schools in more socioeconomically deprived areas than in those that aren't. Obviously, there's not as much access to fresh fruit and vegetables and easier access to ultra-processed foods. So they tend to have a much greater exposure to energy-dense foods that are directly correlated with obesity and diet-related disease. And without widespread changes to the food environment, and this is where you guys start coming in, and we're really expecting people just their personal willpower or their nutritional literacy to somehow tackle this issue. And as we're seeing and have seen for the last at least 30, 40 years, this is failing dismally. So the healthiest choices really need to be the easiest to access, the cheapest and the most convenient. And until we have some top-down action from councils and governments, the health inequalities will simply continue to perpetuate, unfortunately. And next slide, please. So why is this relevant to the C40 Good Food Cities? Well, if implemented appropriately, this will help us to tackle our obesogenic environment and at the same time to reduce health inequalities. Next slide, please. So we're aware that the Nelson Council declared a climate emergency last year, and we also have the Zero Carbon Bill, which aims to reduce our net emissions of greenhouse gases to zero by 2050 and cut methane emissions by up to 40% by 2030. And so through becoming a good food city, Nelson can take an important and necessary step towards achieving these goals and acting proportionately to the climate emergency it's declared, whilst at the same time addressing our growing health crisis. And next slide, please. Okay, so if there's time, then Peter would like to share his story. And I'm sorry if my video hasn't come through.
That's all right. Thank you. Peter.
Yeah, hi. I'll be as quick as I can here, Mayor Rachel. With what I'd like to start with, I hope everybody can hear me. So I sort of sitting with a headphone on, but okay, that's great. Thank you. All right. In Hannah O'Malley's address earlier this afternoon, you would have heard, I think it was Dr. I'll go back to where it was before. It would have been was it Dr. Potter, I think perhaps was, Professor John Potter referred to meat consumption, right? And what he talked about was the meat consumption in traditional agriculture society was really higher than 5 to 10 kilograms per person per year. In New Zealand, it is now around 120 kg per person per year. And it's always hard to put a face on what that means. And if I can just very quickly suggest what's wrong with what's the backing for that fact is you are looking at them. Okay, I was one of those people. I had substantial amounts of meat consumption. I never ever thought to to reduce it until I had a stroke in 2015. Now the thing is that my kind of stroke was called a TIA, a mini stroke in lay people's words, I suppose. But the reality is it's still a stroke. What made it worse for me was the fact that it wasn't only me that had the stroke. I was actually third in line in my family, not just for stroke alone, but the third, in effect, the fourth victim of what we call lifestyle diseases, lifestyle illnesses. heard of these terms until more recently. So I won't hold you up anymore because we've run out of time. But all I'd like to say is that I certainly endorse any, the council's endeavours to look at this area, and I implore you to consider it seriously, because in short, you're talking about people like me and people like Grant who really could have died if we hadn't been woken up to the fact that we needed to change our diets. If anything that your efforts make, then I hope it achieves that. So thank you for.
Thank you.
Peter, thank you, and thank you, and Grant, for sharing your stories and for the information you've provided today. I've just got one. I'll take one question from Councillor Laurie, just quite quickly.
Thanks, Rachel. Thanks, guys. I take it that most of you aren't in Nelson. So I'm curious, how has Nelson become the focus of this very admirable push, which I like the sound of very much? But I'm just wondering, could you explain to us how Nelson has become the focus of this campaign?
Right, let me answer that. One of our members in our board is Hannah, who submitted earlier today. So she actually informed us about this meeting, but we are very keen to actually get this message right across New Zealand. And we know that Nelson has already taken leads in other matters up to now, which we're really pleased about. And we just want to encourage you to continue on that road so that we can get the whole of New Zealand on board.
Thank you.
Right, so just out of curiosity, where are you guys? What part of the country are you in?
We're all over New Zealand. Half of us are in Auckland, Alexandra, Nelson, Wellington, Luke's in Wellington, Christchurch, all over.
If we do it, do you promise to say nice things about Nelson forever?
Most definitely. We already do. You are an example to us already. So just keep on doing what you're doing. You're great.
Thank you. I think there might actually be a common theme in this, and I think the theme or a connector, and I think Dr. Beaglehole might have something to do with this as well. Would that be a possibility?
Yes, indeed. He's one of us, so to
Yes,
speak.
I thought so. Thank you, given much the communication that's been in my inbox for a little while now. So thank you very much for taking the time to come and speak with us today. We really do appreciate that.
And thank you for the opportunity.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.
Now I'm just going to check. We've got somebody who's joined us who is labelled staff. Now, Lindsay, hey, if that is you, could you just raise your hand possibly on the participants bar so that we could see you? I think we've got somebody who's there at the moment. I'm not sure that's going to work, Robin, as a technique, but.
Through the chair, yes, it did. Thank you.
Oh, it did. Oh, well done. That's excellent. Fabulous. So Lindsay is here, and is Gia Thompson here?
Yes.
Oh, well, Gia, welcome. Well, you're next up, Gia, so welcome to the hearing. Well,
Good, thanks.
Your microphone's on, but your video isn't at the moment, so you're
Okay.
welcome to.
I don't know how you work that, but yeah, Susan might be able to help me here.
There we go.
Oh, there we go.
Fantastic. All right, so well, Gia, welcome to the hearing.
Yep,
We've
thank
received
you.
your submission, and the submission is page 316, councillors.
Thank you. Yeah, look, the one thing I am pleased about is the council is that there's going to be less debt than projected, which I think is very good. There's a lot of things though I'd like to see happen. One of them is I would like to see a change in make it easier for commercial properties to get a credit for water leaks, which at the present time is just a diabolical situation. It should be the same as residential. So I'd like them to take note of that. And also I would really like them to take note of the commercial differential, which at 23.6% of the total rates is far more than it should be as a proportion of the total city rates. Because what is happening over the years is there's been an increase in the number of residential rating units as subdivision has occurred, but in the commercial area, very little has changed. And so proportionally, we get hit with more cost of rates every year than the previous year. You know, we do appreciate the 0.05%, but it's not enough. It needs to be far more substantial because we're competing with Richmond, where the rates for the commercial properties out there are far less. So that is a major thing I think needs to be looked at. I do believe also that the costs of the, I think it's the NRDA, the promotional outfit, and uniquely Nelson are both far too high really, and for what they achieve. It's not achieving a great deal as far as I can see. Look, in Timaru, they have a promotional outfit down there, which seems to be far more on the case in promoting Timaru and sending out information of useful nature and everything else, and getting on national television as well. So I'd like to make sure that they are performing, or their budgets are cut. The Stoke Hall, I think 120,000 budgeted for design for earthquake work is far too high. I don't know where that came from. And 100,000 for the parking strategy. Surely we can do that with existing staff rather than having more staff, which does seem to be an issue. And that also means that this extra 8 new staff, I do believe that we can get top heavy with staff, and you see it when you do apply for consents and things, as somebody talks to somebody and somebody talks to somebody else, and they're all charging their time out, which has, incidentally, the administration charges also had a tremendous heave lately, which I don't think is justified. But if they simplified things and made things more realistic and stopped being petty bureaucrats, I reckon that a lot more would be done in a lot less time. And I think it's high time that that occurred, because the poor old person that's applying for a consent or doing whatever they need to do is getting lumbered with a lot that they don't need to. And that would also help the housing thing, because if you keep the cost of getting consents down, it's more inspiring for people to build houses and do things like that. The climate change thing too, 900,000 are allocated for climate change, which can be simply promoted through their various news media type situations without having all that extra, I think is over the top as well. And as for stormwater and flood protection, well, the Modeller's Pond, I think, is a good thing, and I think it's being used as a bit of a thing because it's had the stormwater pumped into it for long enough. And if it could go back to what it used to be and flushed out with salt water every now and then, I would think it should be a lot more healthy, and I would like to see an investigation into that being done. The inner city parking, we certainly don't want to go through the situation like happened down Trafalgar Street, where 204,000 was to be wasted taking away car parks and widening the footpaths. How on earth that ever got through, I'll never know, but it is totally unrealistic. You know, big cities have footpaths and people are going down them. I know there's a temporary problem at the moment, but that's not going to be long term, and we don't want to see money wasted on those sort of things unnecessarily, because we need the car parks. Nelson's a provincial city which relies on people coming in from various areas, up hills, out of town, and we need to have the car parks, as can be well seen when most of them are full, even down Trafalgar Street at the moment. Thank you.
Thank you, Gear. Thank you. It's a very clear submission. Are there any questions for Gear? Just check see if the councillor's got any questions. No, Gear, I think it's just a very clear submission. So thank you. I appreciate the effort you put into your submissions and for taking the time to come and speak to us today.
That's right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Good, thanks. Bye.
Now, next submission is from Lindsay Hay, and Lindsay's submission is on page 253 of your papers, and Lindsay has a PowerPoint presentation as well. Welcome, Lindsay, to the hearing.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, councillors, for sitting down and listening to me. Oh, there I am. Getting a haircut tomorrow. I'm here to speak basically about the rate differential in the CBD, and I'll basically read from my PDF that you put up there, because the traditional retail is becoming increasingly volatile and challenging as a business model. Bricks and mortars have shifted online, while online is going to pop up storefronts. The high street and Main Street are the stuff of nostalgia. Big box is losing ground to new models that attract consumers through their most trusted assistant, the smartphone. What's next? What's the future for Nelson then? Just outlining the problem, I've said there that differential is 100%, but I noticed Gear said it's something like 40%, so I stand to be corrected there. And we have somewhere between 37 and 40 empty retail shops in town. I walked around and counted them. And the rates will be unsustainable. As the recession bites, more shops will be not reopen, and we're looking like Greymouth in 1965, if anyone's old enough to remember that. The golden days are over, and the news that Nelson's economy will contract by 7.9% and unemployment increase by 9% won't help the central city's health. And I find it's rather cynical that the council load the revenue loss from the 1 hour free parking. It's 350,000 or so, I can't remember. I saw it in the paper some time ago when we used to get a paper, onto the CBD rate part. Not only the landlords used to have a vote, but that's been removed. And taxation without representation, you know where that eventually, how that eventually works out. And if you don't, Boston Tea Party, Berlin Wall, all those things, in the end, the people will revolt that own the properties. The NCC unilateral widening of footpaths in Trafalgar Street, thus halving the car parking space without consultation. And despite having no C19 in Nelson, and if there was C19 in Nelson, there'll be an isolation, no ICU, not strolling down Trafalgar Street. I'm going over the page. Now I can remember going to a meeting a number of years ago on the eastern end of Bridge Street. What was proposed to tidy that up? There was going to be walking bricks across and bollards and things. Instead, we got Smurf stripes, which really wasn't what I would. No one said anything about them at the meeting, but they went ahead. There is a disconnect between the city and those CBD rate parks, and we've seen it before. The Montgomery Car Park Village Green thing. It took Gear and John Fitchett to the High Court to stop that. So this has been an ongoing thing where council seems to race off at a tangent without talking to the people that are involved, that are actually part of the race. And the 30 kilometres an hour, spent a bit of time in Christchurch, family said, and the whole of Christchurch CBD is 30k. But no one sticks to it. Even the police don't do it. And if they did apply it, there would be gridlock in Christchurch because it's just, right, I better race on to the solution. I've got three points there on the solution. There needs to be a Nelson Council, Retail Association, Commerce or Unique Nelson and Commercial Real Estate form a super group to discuss planning and the way forward. I was in Noosa last year in Hastings Street, Rodeo Drive of Australia. Half the retail tenants have gone, independent ones, and a third of the corporate one. It's a worldwide problem, and the solution will be somewhere in the world. We need a plan. Rate rebates. Recently bought a building in Paeroa. Council gave us a 50% rebate for 3 years. And maybe you guys could be thinking about if a retail shop is empty for over 12 months, you give them a 50% rebate and another 2 years once they get it occupied. And there's a lot of nonsense talked out there about, oh, we should be building residential things in the central, converting these buildings to residential. Well, it doesn't work because the fire code requirements are just so strenuous. You just couldn't do it economically. The council need to be more inclusive with the landlords and a solution will be found. There will be a city somewhere where this problem of retail decline has been tackled And I would suggest that the council, the Retail Association member be sent to explore, and the cost shared between the parties to it. So that's where I'm at, guys.
Lindsay, thank you very much. That was a comprehensive submission. We appreciate getting the written one too, because then we can get a copy of that. So it's very helpful.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Lindsay. Lindsay, can you just tell me when was there a city centre representative on a decision-making group around the parking fees? That must have been really some time ago.
I can't recall, but I know what happened at the time. Richmond had free parking. Nelson introduced 1 hour free. In the first year, council absorbed the $350,000 loss. Next year, it was loaded onto the rates for the CBD. And I don't, you can only, get so much out of them. And it's a declining part of the city. And there may be something to do with it. I don't know. You have to send some folk out in the wide world to have a look. But I can't see how you can just keep rates at those rates. The values are declining and the rate base is declining because it's a percentage of RV. The RVs are all declining. However, there's new houses being built. And there's just going to be a shift from what you might call the CBD, which was an easy touch years ago when all the shops are full and they paid key money for Trafalgar Street. That is no longer the case.
Thanks, Lindsay. I've got a question from Councillor Edgar and then one from Councillor Sansom.
Thank you.
Thank you for that. Lindsay, the Uniquely Nelson essentially represent all the retailers in the CBD. Do you have any involvement with them or?
No, I don't. I don't. But their voice appears to be muffled. Because when they went down Trafalgar Street the other Monday, didn't hear anything from, it was the Craig Taylors of this world that were down there knocking on Pat's door. It wasn't Unique Nelson.
Right. Do you get regular communication from them or any other?
Sorry?
Do you get regular communication from
No,
them?
I don't. No, I don't. I'm not involved in them and I don't go to meetings, or I haven't done for a number of years. So I have no idea where they're at. There's a lack of representation from the CBD folk, and I think they've got to have a direct, not via a third party, they need a direct representation to council. So we don't have this nonsense, and it's been going on for years. Let's face it, the Village Green, the East Bridge Street, it's just, you can't do that, And if you do keep doing it, you'll end up in a revolt. There's nothing sure. It's happened everywhere else in the world.
Okay, thanks so much for that.
Thanks, Judy.
Thank you, Lindsay. I think the Councillor Sanson's question's already been asked. So Lindsay, I'll just double check. I think that's everybody. No, Councillor Laurie, and then we really are finishing up.
Thanks, Madam Mayor. Thanks, Lindsay, for the presentation.
No worries, mate.
You talked about asked if there was a town where they've solved some of these problems. One city that a lot of people look to is Mulhouse in France, which was in a really bad way, and they turned themselves around massively. Yeah. And one of the ways they've done that is by adopting a lot of the sort of strategies that you've objected. So I'm just curious, like when I was listening to you, it sounded a bit like, and tell me if I'm wrong, but it sounded a bit like you'd like things to stay the way they are, but you'd like them to be cheaper. No,
not at all. Things aren't the same. I'm not a great writer and orator. I recognise things are changing. The world is changing. In the preface there, it's changing. So we've got to change too, as CBD property owners and as council. It's all changing, and if you don't change, you might as well be a wagon wheel repairer. They have no place in society now. Why I suggest too, just quickly, why I suggest that someone from the Retail Association goes is because their perspective of going to Louise, was it the town in France and
Salzburg.
And Salzburg apparently, and Austria is the same. They've tackled it, but you need the guy to go not from council, because he will just, or he or she, or staff member will only have that bureaucratic look at it. You need the retailer who's down on the ground, who can talk to retailers and say, what do they do? How does it work here? You know? And then you get the real story, not some spin doctor's version.
Thanks, Lindsay. We might have to do that virtually for the moment, I think. We might have to send on, but I'm sure we could actually set that up. It'd be quite an interesting thing to do, to connect retailers from some of those.
Well, I think you have to.
Centres, yeah.
You have to, or you end up in the situation we've had for about 20 odd years, which is not working.
Thank you very much for submitting. We really appreciate that. Thank you for coming along to the hearing today as well.
Thank you very much for allowing me the time. Thank you all.
Right, I think that is the end of the submissions, unless I have missed somebody. I don't think I have. Ken Trayson isn't able to join us today. So that is everybody. We did have some further late submissions. So I've got a recommendation to accept late submissions to the draft annual plan, one from Alistair Cotterill and one from David Johnson on behalf of Ngāti Kuia iwi General Managers of Te Paiihu. So hopefully it's moved by Councillor Edgar. Can I have a seconder just by a show of hand? Thank you, Councillor Neil Stevens. And then I'll put all those in favour. If you could just raise your hand, that'd be great. Against? Carried. Thank you. So that is the late submissions that we've dealt with. Now, are there any other just procedural matters that elected members want to raise? If there are, just pop your hand up for me on the participants box, just in case there's anything else that you want to cover off. I think that's Councillor McGurk.
Yeah, thanks. Thanks, Rachel. I'm just wondering how much time we've got to get some questions in as we've gone through. We've sort of been taking some notes, whether they go directed to officers or the officers.
It's a good question. I'll go to Miss McDonald and she'll let us know how long we've got. Hopefully she's there. Yes, I think she is. Just get you to unmute, Nikki.
Sorry. How long we've got for what? I missed that.
Oh, just Councillor McGurk was just asking how long have elected members got to email in their questions? When do they need to be in by?
Yes, we're compiling them as fast as we get them, and then we'll try and send them round in one document. So if you were to get them to us by the end of the week, that would be helpful.
All right, thank you. Hopefully that might be a wee bit of a challenge. End of the week meaning Sunday. Could we make that Sunday, given we've got a very big day tomorrow, and I think most of us got meetings on Friday as well.
Yes, that will be fine. We may need to send them out in 2 lots then, so that we don't hold you up.
That's all right. I think we'll be happy with that. So right, any other questions? Just go to my list, see how we go. I think that is everybody. All right, so that is very good. We finished a little bit on time, which is good. Hopefully that was satisfactory, Councillor Brand. Got through it not too badly today, so it's much easier to do a half day, I have to say. What I find is when you're chairing these Zoom meetings, to do an entire day chairing of Zoom meetings is really hard yards, and I think all of us kind of fade a bit after a few hours. So a half day is really probably the maximum that's appropriate. So now you've got everything you need, Robin, at your end.
Through the chair, I think that is right. We are finished.
All right. Well, thank you all very much for participating in the hearing. I've really enjoyed that. I think we started our process with karakia, so I'd like to close today with karakia and say to you, I think we're one of the things I just was writing my mayor's message for the Nelson and reflecting on quite a few of the positives that we've seen through COVID-19 being in the lockdown, some of the social cohesion that we haven't seen for quite some time. It's been really interesting to see that social cohesion there, and I'm really hoping that that can continue both within Nelson City Council and out in the community, because I think it is really important. I reflected on those words from the very wise Mike Ward, and of course he knows well that the most important thing is that we do is we actually celebrate the positives in life, and we do that. The other issues tend to resolve themselves quite well if we just apply a bit of creative thinking to the two issues. However, I think many of the submitters today have talked about the challenge facing our community. We've had some real success with the government's approach to managing COVID, and I look at some of the tragic situations that are happening around the world, and I'm really grateful to live here. But for many people, we do know that they've lost jobs and they've had their income reduced, and it's very, very challenging. There will be people in our communities that have never had to rely on government support before in their lives, and they will now. And I think that message around kindness and inclusiveness and just reaching out and looking out for each other is going to be important as we continue through the recovery phase. So I think that's something that we just need to reflect on as we get into our decision making as well. The deliberations report was in production, and we'll have it out to you as soon as we can through the process, and I'll just let Ms. McDonald will keep you up to date with how that's going, what will be able to be ready for us for deliberations in the report as it comes out, and then maybe a few items that just need to be coming to you a little bit later as we get through just due to timing. So thank you all very much for the participation, and as we started with karakia, I think it would be nice if we close with karakia. So all of those of you wonderful people who are sitting behind the scenes, you can come out and say hello now so we can thank you sincerely for all that work. Mary, that was fabulous bell ringing. Did give me a fright occasionally, but it was very effective, so thank you. A combination of homegrown and high tech going on to make this work. And to all of our administration advisors and governance advisors who have been working so hard to bring these hearings together, I really want to thank you. And the feedback that we've had from our participants has been really grateful for the work that you've been doing to allow them to be part of this meeting. So that's just wonderful to hear. And again, I think that's just a part of us all working together to make things work in what are rather unusual times. However, I am looking forward next week to coming back to a little bit more face-to-face, and I'm sure that we'll be able to make that work too. So thank you all. And I think we'll close today with karakia. For those of you who don't follow a faith, you can just substitute whatever thinking feels appropriate to you at this point in time, just to reflect on the opportunities that we've been given living in this community and the spirit of which we carry out our work. So just we've closed with karakia. Kia tau, kia tātou katoa, te atawhai o tō tātou ariki. O iho karaiti me te whiwhi nei tahitanga, ki te wairua tapu, ake, amene. Kia ora. I'll close the hearing. Well done.
Thank you.